Morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the first ever meeting of the Motor Fuel Metering and Quality Advisory Board. My name is Jason Harris. I'll be the presiding officer for the board over the next year or so. I'm very happy to call this meeting to order at exactly 10 a.m. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to Mike for a few words from him.
Morning, everyone. As our presiding officer, Jason Harris, mentioned, this is our first advisory board meeting for this particular group. There was a work group that was established right after the passing of motor fuels to the TDLR agency. But that was a very temporary to kind of get the rules set up, get everything going. But there was a bill passed in the last session that established this group to be a permanent advisory board. So we're glad to have you on board. Welcome to the agency. Just kind of let you know that we pretty much will rely on you for a lot of information for the industry. You're the experts, and we're not. What we're experts in is issuing licenses, and and the registration. That's about all we do. So we rely on you quite a bit. So I look forward to working with each and every one of you. I know that I've worked with several that are already on this call, and I look forward to continued success in this. Jason, I will let you know that our chairman has joined the call, so I'm sure he'd probably like to say a few words himself.
Sounds great. Please do.
Hey, Jason. Hey, good to see you.
Good morning.
Mike, thanks for the introduction. Listen, guys, I know this is uncharted territories, but it's exciting. This is one area, and I know Mike, I caught the tail end of what Mike was saying. But basically, this is one area where we see it evolving very quickly in many regards, in regards to the fraud, but also development of energy and renewable energy and just all kinds of different things that are coming at this. So I'm going to need you guys to just let us know when and where we need to move. I'm sure that each of you guys have plenty of things to jump on, and I guarantee you, and I've already put the request in for Mike to double your pay. So congratulations, you all got. So good luck with that. And I think it's in cryptocurrency. I'm not sure which, but anyway, we'll figure what that looks like later on.
Yeah.
But anyway, all to be said is we're excited about you guys. You have my cell phone number. If you need me, holler at me. The governor's watching closely this arena. And because, again, we see this is going to be front and center next session in a lot of regards. So you could not ask for a better team of people on TDLR's task to get this thing. And Mike is the weakest link. So and that's a pretty good chain. And so you guys let us know if you need anything regarding me and what I'm doing. And congratulations on being part of it. And I look forward to supporting you. And I'm going to tap out unless you guys have any questions for me.
Thanks a lot, Rick. Appreciate it.
All
Thank
right.
you, Chairman.
Thank you, Rick.
And he's right. I am the weakest link. You'll find that out pretty quickly. The others are much more experts than I am, so I rely on their counsel quite a bit. So, but we do want to thank the chairman for taking time out of his busy schedule to be here. So I know that you're busy. It's a Monday, so you're looking at the stock market with the work that you do. So we appreciate you being here.
Checks in the mail. Just hold your breath. Hold your breath. Y'all
Thanks,
have a great day.
Jason, it's all yours.
All right, sir. Appreciate that, Mike. Thank you for the kind words. I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say we're definitely looking forward to contributing our knowledge to help the agency do the right thing and do it efficiently, as I know you guys are committed to doing. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. Given this is a virtual meeting, just a couple of reminders. Please mute your microphones unless you are actively speaking. And be sure to, and I know this one's the hard one, is announce your name before you start talking, just so your comments and questions can be, accurately recorded in the record. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to Delia. She's going to perform a roll call to make sure we officially have a quorum present.
Thank you. Jason Harris, presiding officer.
Here.
Wes Nance,
Present.
Adam Thompson,
Here.
Zeth Stevens,
Here.
Carlos Garza,
Here.
Terry Hara,
Here.
Nathan Winkleman,
Here.
Terry Maxey,
Here.
Keisha Esqueda. Here. Ex officio members Stephen Skurlock
Here.
and Jeff Headley.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thanks, Delia.
You're welcome.
Before we get into the meat of the business, I'd like to take a moment for each of us to kind of give a brief introduction. You know, where you're from, what experience you have in fuel metering or quality, and anything else you'd like to add that would help, you know, your other board members get to know you and those folks within the TLR and watching online. So as I call on you, put you on the spot, please do so. I'll start just to break the ice. Again, Jason Harris, currently working for Buc-ee's. Been here 9 years, really overall environmental health and safety, but primarily our fuel system compliance and maintenance. Prior to this, I served 15 years as a regulator with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. So I'm kind of familiar with the government process, which I hope will help in this endeavor. Let's see, let's go in order here. Carlos.
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Carlos Garza. My office is down in Edinburgh, Texas. Company name is La Lomita Inc., which I am the president CEO. I've got 33 years experience in this business, pretty much worked in all facets of the business, so understand the metering system quite well, and happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. Seth Stevens.
I'm Seth Stevens. I'm based out of Floydada, Texas, up in the Panhandle. We are an agriculture cooperative. In my 10 years here, we've designed and built 2 convenience stores, farm store hybrids. And so I followed that process, you know, from inception to completion on both of those, and I'm looking forward to helping out where I can.
Thank you, Seth. Terry Hara.
Yes, my name's Terry Hara. I currently work for Cefco Fikes Incorporated. Have about 25 years in the business, all the way from installing underground systems to being a technician and a calibrator. I currently am overall environmental and fuel quality for Cefco, including new builds and working with TDLR complaints things, which we're grateful that they're not TDA complaints anymore. So I'm here to hopefully help and do what we can.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate that. Mr. Nance.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wes Nance. I am currently serving as a regional service director for JF Petroleum, formerly Petroleum Solutions Incorporated here in Texas. I have served in the industry for a little over 20 years. Started out as a technician, worked my way up, and have been through all of the processes and try to do everything I can to help out. Pretty familiar with the old TDA metering systems, and I'm very familiar with all of the metering systems that are out there in the market today. Happy to help. Anything I can do, just give me a holler.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Adam Thompson.
I am Adam Thompson. I work at MCS Petroleum Inc. We specialize in compliance for gas stations, retail, wholesale. I enjoy being on the board TDLR, learning more information. I've learned a lot in the past couple of years working with them. We operate in about 12 different states. So we see the variety of laws that are adapted for each state, how strict some states are over others. And so it's pretty cool to bring that to the table coming in here and helping figure out what works for Texas. If y'all have any questions, I would be more than happy to give my knowledge as much as I have and definitely take in what I can learn from everybody here.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Mr. Winkleman.
Good morning, Nathan Winkleman. I am from Brenham, Texas, your Bluebell capital. I have 40 years of retail experience in being a gasoline petroleum retailer. Also have 25 years of restaurant experience where I had Buccaneer Food Store and Nathan's Barbecue in Brenham, Texas. So those 40 years I go way back. Been seeing have seen a lot of all the changes, all the compliance changes through the years, and pretty hands-on how that affects the public, and also how that affects us as retailers. I have previously I had a couple locations, but just through the last 25 years, just one location there on US 290 in Brenham, Texas. So I hope that I can be able to provide a lot of input due to my years of some of the retail experience to the board, and I'm honored to be a part. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry Maxey.
Thanks, Jason. Terry Maxey, Maxey Energy Company. We're a fuel distributor out in Uvalde, Texas. Been in the business for about 33 years. We do everything from running transport trucks, small bobtail trucks with meters on them. Run a small chain of convenience stores, about 15 stores. And I've had a lot of experience doing underground storage tank work and stuff as well. Also, over the years, been real active with our state association, Texas Food and Fuel Association. So it's an honor to be here. Happy to help in any way I can, and excited to pitch in and get whatever job needs to be done.
Thank you, Terry. Keisha Esqueda.
Keisha Esqueda, I work for Flint Hills Resources. So we are a fuel supplier in the state of Texas. We own a refinery in Corpus Christi, and we have 3 pipelines that run through Texas and 9 terminals. So basically, my role here is to make sure that we are producing fuel that meets the quality standards and is compliant. And I look forward to working with all of you and collaborating as best as we can. So,
Thank you very much, Keisha. Stephen Skurlock.
Yes, good morning. I'm Steve Skurlock. I'm with Independent Bankers Association of Texas. I have been in or around the banking business, so don't have a tremendous amount of skills, speaking of candidates. We've been working for the last, 10, 12 years or so on card fraud issues, and am delighted that we are moving forward and look forward to working collaboratively with you guys. Like Jason, I have a background of some 8 years with the Texas Department of Banking as Deputy Banking Commissioner in the late 80s and early 90s, and have somehow ended up doing this for a living. So look forward to learning from all of you folks, and again, working cooperatively and collaboratively as we try to solve some of the issues that are important to the folks that pay my salary. So thanks for having us, and appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Jeff Headley.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Headley. I'm a detective sergeant with the Houston Police Department, and I run a proactive squad there for cyber and financial crimes. And I know some of you might find it curious that I would be involved there as an ex officio member of this board. It's because I spent quite a bit of time working the point of sale compromises regarding related to fuel pumps, as well as ATMs and everything else in my career. I spent 24 years of my 27 years on the police department working in financial crimes, and mostly a proactive role going after the suspects that are the worst offenders in these types of cases. As such, I've worked a lot with Steve Skurlock and some others, Jessica and several of you at TDLR, as well as with the guys at the Texas Financial Crimes Intelligence Center now that we have fortunately got up and running. And I look forward to see what we can do to help the citizens and victims out there as it relates to the compromises at the fuel pumps.
Awesome, sir. Thank you. And thanks to everyone for sharing a little bit about yourselves. Appreciate that. That really helps to demonstrate the vast, diversity of knowledge and experience we have on this board, and the powers we can, put to bear to assist the TDLR in the development of rules and the further expansion of their program. Right now, I'd like to call on Mary Winston, the advisory board attorney, for a little bit of information on virtual meetings. Mary?
Good morning, everyone. So glad you're here. Mr. Spurlock, we are all valuable members of this board, and you were hand-selected. Thank you for your applications, but our chairman reviewed everything and everyone and vetted, and the commission voted, and we thank you so much for taking on this responsibility. So today I want to start with meeting protocols and best practices. We've been in this thing for a minute. We're not going to say we're in the midst of a change. Things have changed. So this virtual world, we used to jokingly say the Brady Bunch boxes is here to stay, at least probably until I retire. So we've gotten used to it. We know how to work with it, but there are a couple of things that do make it run better. Number one, our presiding officer said, mute your mics if you're not speaking. Announce yourself. I believe the hand raise function is disabled. So if you raise your hand, we should be able to catch it if someone's talking and we're having a really spirited debate, which happens in some of the meetings. Presiding officer may not be able to see you. We'll jump in. Staff will let him know that, we do have a hand raised, or he may see a hand raised and he can acknowledge you. We ask also, if at all possible, to attend the meetings at a stationary location with your cameras on. Now that may sound odd, but we have had time to time folks who are multitasking, maybe to a fault, and we're watching greenery pass by as we have a meeting. Well, TDLR also regulates driver education and safety, and we're concerned about our members, but that is a poor testimony for the agency if we have board members who are driving while on a meeting. Make sure if you're drinking water, it's water. Just saying. Please note, the main thing is don't become the next YouTube viral sensation, because just when you think you won't, you will. Public comments. Public comments are taken and requested, and when we post agendas, we let folks know, if you want to make a public comment, this is what to do. And we have it in our next section. I don't believe we have any public comments for this meeting, but it all depends on what the issue is at hand as to how many and how long that would take. It's typically limited to about 3 minutes just to save time. And note that it's not an agenda item. So whatever is commented on, the only questions that the board can ask would be clarifying questions. If, oh, I didn't understand that question, or are you saying X or are you saying Y? We don't make statements on it because it's not noticed, right? But it can become a part of a future meeting or work group. Public participation. We're virtual. The public participation that we have now, previously we'd be in this room to the left of me, our public meeting room, where folks could actually sit in person and listen, take notes or on their laptops or what have you. Our public participation is at a wider audience. It is completely public. It's on our YouTube channel, and they'll be able to see, they'll be able to comment afterwards. They have our contact information and can always email us. That's my update for this agenda item. And the next agenda item, presiding officer, is public comment.
Thank you, Mary. And on that note, you were absolutely correct. We do not have any public comments for this particular meeting. So we will move on to the next item on the agenda. Jessica Escobar, our Assistant General Counsel, will give us some information on open government.
Good morning, presiding officers, new members. Thank you for being here this morning. Hopefully you can hear me. I am downtown at our offices, and we've got a little bit of construction going on outside my window. So if it becomes a little bit too loud, please let me know. But I am going to present our open government training this morning. So I think most of y'all have been on a board before, but for those of y'all that haven't, this is going to be some information to let y'all know what to expect both in open meetings and kind of some background as to what we do here at TDLR. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with y'all. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So what are we going to cover this morning? Open Meetings Act, Administrative Procedures Act, and Public Information Act. Like I said, some of y'all may be familiar with this, and for those of y'all that have had training before, this is a little bit of a refresher, but bear with me. I'll go be brief and get you through this because we've got quite a morning this morning. The Open Meetings Act, we briefly discussed this. Mary gave you some highlights on what we do in these meetings. This has changed a bit for us. During the last legislative session, we were given the authority to conduct advisory board meetings via the internet. And so this has changed things a lot for us at TDLR. So our boards are able to meet via Teams or Zoom or WebEx, however we choose to do that. So that's something that's changed for us, and you'll see as we meet online. So what is the Open Meetings Act? It's established to make sure that there's an open and transparent government so that the people can come to the meetings. And it requires that meetings of governmental bodies are open and available to the public and that they know about these meetings. So there's public notice, where, when, and what is going to be discussed. And so these are generally established so that it's mandatory and they're always construed in favor of open government. So there's some general building blocks to the Open Meetings Act. What are they? Quorum. So you've got to have a quorum of your members, a majority. So in your case, you've got a 9-member board. So we have some ex officio members, so it's a little bit different, but we have a 9-member board. That is what established by statute. So you've got 5 members that is required for a quorum. So it's the half plus 1. So you have to have 5 members to make up a quorum. And so those 5 members are required to be able to take action. So you can have less than that is allowed to meet, but they cannot take any action. So you all are a unique board for us at TDLR because we have ex officio members. So we've got Mr. Skurlock, Mr. Headley that are on the board that are ex officio. So this was established by statute, and they are a part of the board, but they are non-voting members, and they do not count towards our quorum. So if they are not available, they do not count towards our quorum, and they will not affect it so that we can still go on and meet. So a quorum is required for us to be able to take action. Deliberation, another requirement. So a deliberation takes place when you've got a discussion, either verbal or written. We'll talk about this a little bit later, where you're talking about any type of board business, something that is subject to what this board does. And a meeting. This is any time a quorum of that governmental body gets together to deliberate, talk about that public business with themselves or with somebody else to take action. So notice is vital. It's so vital for Open Meetings Act because you have to give the public the opportunity to participate. So what's required in the notice is the date, the time, the place of the meeting, and what the meeting is going to be about. So for us, what we have to do is we have to file the notice in the form of an agenda, like it says. So we have to stick to that agenda. So oftentimes, Mary will have to jump in, and she may say, guys, this is not on the agenda at this moment. So we need to stick to the agenda, but we can talk about this at the next meeting. So we have to stick to the meeting agenda because we've got to keep the public informed and we cannot go off topic. So we file that agenda with the Secretary of State 7 days before the meeting, at least, and then we post it both on the TDLR website and the Secretary of State website. We also go above and beyond that. We email notice to our subscribers that subscribe to TDLR emails. So we get notice out far and wide. So anything that is not on that agenda, we cannot discuss during that meeting. So what about social functions? What happens when you've got a social function, a convention, a workshop, as often happens? You will have associations, you have meetings, things that come together. Can you still get together and talk, right? There's many of y'all, I've seen you all. Does that mean we can't talk together as a group? Absolutely not. You can still get together. What it means is you can't get together to start talking about that board business, because once you start getting together to talk about that board business that you might be taking action on, then that's when you start running into potential violations. So you can meet together, but you've got to be cautious about getting that quorum together and what you're talking about. So things to remember. you want to be careful to avoid getting that quorum together and watching those discussions, substantive discussions, and then walking quorum. So what is a walking quorum? That's when you have less number than that quorum. So you've got 4 or less people getting together to talk about board business. And then those 4 or fewer people start talking to other members. So basically you're expanding to have a walking quorum. So for example, on your 9-member board, or let's use yours. On your 9, if you have 4 of y'all that start talking about something, but then of those 4, a couple more send out an email or discussion and you expand the conversation, you now have a walking quorum. So you want to avoid where communications kind of start a telephone chain, because you now have everybody discussing things. It may not have started as a group, but it has expanded. So you want to be aware of the walking quorum. So these can occur during conference calls, video calls. You just met and we're talking about something in the hallway. The biggest one that becomes the most complicated right now is technology, right? Emails, texts, and things as simple as Twitter, Facebook, instant message. These are things that you want to be careful about. So to avoid your walking quorum, avoid meeting in small groups and then talking about something down the line later. Avoid doing emails. So if you're going to be sending an email, even if you're thinking, okay, I'll just send it out BCC or I'll send it out to a couple people, it becomes problematic because your email that you sent to a couple of board members may be forwarded on to another board member and so on and so forth. And that thought that you had for one now goes down the line to be shared with others. So you need to be very cautious. Not only that, it becomes an open record. So we'll talk about that later. So also social media. So you may have posted something that you thought innocently on your Facebook page, and it turns into a thought and a discussion between other members. So you need to be cautious about that. Another thing is polling. Hey, what do you guys think about this? Informally, and that becomes an informal vote. So guidelines for open sessions. So when you're meeting together, you've got to stick to that agenda. Coming back to that again. Mary will catch it. I may jump in and say, this is kind of veering a little bit off, even just a little. We've got to come back to that agenda and say, okay, let's get this on the next meeting notice. So the other time that this comes up and it may be an issue is public comment. This happens more frequently at our commission meetings, but it may come up for y'all. So we may have rules that are up for discussion and somebody may start talking about something and be going off in a different direction and you may want to address it. Unfortunately, if it's in the public comment section, we can't respond. What we can say is thank you, we appreciate it. What we will do is present this to our program staff or the appropriate staff that need to respond. We'll take a look at it and then we can respond next time if we need to do that. But we can't engage with that commenter. So to avoid violating the Open Meetings Act, we need to, especially on notice, we need to definitely give enough time when we post. And so we're always careful to do that, 7 days. We want to make sure we stick to the meeting agenda and we don't want to raise other issues during the meeting. So what can happen? There's got to be some penalties or consequences for violations, right? So civil remedies, these are a big thing if you have violations of the Open Meetings Act. And this often happens when somebody sees that there's an interested person, usually the media or somebody else, and they'll see that an action was taken during a meeting and it was not either properly noticed, you went off the agenda, something like that. So what they'll do is they'll take an action in court to have that action, that vote, whatever, they'll have it reversed. And so that's one of the civil remedies that can be taken. So it's basically voided. Anything you did during that meeting related to that was not on the agenda is voided. But there's also criminal penalties, and these have come up recently in the last few years in court cases. So if you are engaging as a board member in a walking quorum, you're participating in closed door meetings, you may be subject to criminal penalties. Obviously not something you want to do. So best practices, avoid that walking quorum, avoid those meetings without being in an open meeting. Here's some resources available for you. We will provide these to you upon your request. They're available to you. There's training on the the Attorney General's website if you're interested in that as well. So next, let's go to the Administrative Procedures Act. So this is rulemaking, which we do a lot of here at TDLR, and I'll give you some background on that next, some of our stats as to what we're doing. But the Administrative Procedures Act basically goes to the rules and procedures that we work on and the rulemaking process. Again, the bottom line is transparency during the rulemaking process. Make sure that the public is involved. So what is a rule? I'm sure everybody has seen that we adopt rules, we know about rules, but what are they really? They implement or interpret law. So statute comes down from the legislature, and we are given our directive to put that into play. So that's what the rule does. Or we may be putting a procedure or some type of requirement at our agency level into play, and that's what we do with the rule. It isn't an internal practice that only affects, internal staff. That's not what a rule is. But rules are often new. They may be amendments. We may be repealing a rule. There's different things you can do with a rule. So where do we get the ideas for our rulemaking? Some of it is mandatory. We'll be talking about that later, related to one of the House bills. So it may be the result of legislative changes. It may be from you all. You may have ideas as part of the advisory board that you bring to us and say, I think this is what we need to be doing. So we may implement changes that way. It may be from staff that have recognized an issue from talking to the public, or they're seeing something that could be done better, more efficiently. And it can also be through our 4-year rule review process, where we just step back and take a look at our rules and see what is working, what isn't working, or it may be through our rule petition process. So what is a rule petition? It's not very common, but it is where an interested person who brings a petition to an agency that is asking for us to adopt a rule. So who is an interested person? A Texas resident, or a business that's here in Texas, or a governmental subdivision, or public or private agency other than a state agency here in Texas. So they're bringing us this document saying, here are the rules I want you to adopt, or the rule, and this is what I need you to do. So we'll go through that process in proposing a rule. So this is a lot of steps, but basically all you need to know, these green boxes are everything that's happening but behind the scenes at TDLR to go through the rulemaking process. The blue boxes here are what we bring to you for rulemaking. So it all starts with us drafting up, preparing rule. We have to go through some analysis and some review. And before we bring it over to you, we get it over to the governor's office. They take an initial review, then we bring it over to you all. So generally that's the process, is that we'll bring it to you, take your input, you all say, okay, this is good. And then we go out through for public comment. So at that time, we go out for a 30-day public comment period. We give the public the opportunity to give their input. So at that time, we want to hear back from them. After that 30-day time, we bring the comments in, we review them, and then we bring them back to you a second time. So we say, here's what we've got. We think that these changes need to be made. They don't need to be made, but here are the comments or your input. And you can either say, that's great, we think that we agree, we want those changes made, we don't, whatever the case may be. So after that time, we bring that over to the commission. So you say, we're good to go with it. We bring it to our commission. You met with Chairman Figueroa this morning. We take it to him and the commissioners. And if they say we're good, we take it over to the Texas Register, publish it again, and it is effective 20 days after that. So it's a bit of a process, but this makes sure, again, for transparency's sake, lots of people have the opportunity to give their input. So the rule review process. This is a 4-year process that takes every 4 years, and we put out our intent to review. So we publish that and say, okay, we're taking the opportunity to look at the motor fuel rules. And so the public has 30 days. They can say, we think these rules are fantastic, they're terrible, they're good, but you need to do this. And so we'll take in all of those comments, we bring them to the commission, and we say, here we are. You either re-adopt the rules, they're working, or we may make some changes and bring them to you all. So again, this only takes place every 4 years. So those are some more resources on rulemaking. We're going to talk more about rules later on during the meeting. Public Information Act, this is the last bit for this. So Public Information Act is something that you may or may not have heard of. In the federal world, it's called FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, two separate things. This is what we operate off of in the state, the Public Information Act, Open Records Act. And again, transparency, making sure that the public has the right to know everything that's going on in state government. So they have the right to know what state employees are doing, how things are working. They can ask for any of that information, and generally they have a right of access to it. So it makes all documents and records available to them, open to the public. There are very, very few exceptions, and our staff works to make sure that they are complying with that act. So any document, including electronic submission, communications, so that means cell phones, laptops, voicemails, all of that that's maintained by the state, that's official agency business, is all subject to the Public Information Act. And so again, transparency, and it's construed in favor of the person that's requesting it. So when we get a request, and if you get a request, somebody's looking for your minutes or your notes or something you had from the meeting, we have to get that written request. He is written. So if somebody calls you and asks for it, have them put it in writing. If we get a written request for records or correspondence, we forward it immediately to our general counsel open records team, because we have timelines that are tied to these. So we have to comply and give our team time to process. They've got to go and gather the records. If there's a need for them to request that they be held back, they need the timeline to do that as well. So we work with them, and one of the things that we do, or we can never do, is ask why people need information. So we're able to ask for clarification, because sometimes it may be a little bit unclear, and so we need that time to be able to work through and help somebody to respond to someone's request. So, like I said, there's certain things that we will never be able to provide, and those are date of birth, your email, driver's license, driver's records, credit card numbers, HIPAA information related to medical. So those are things that we will never provide, and those are automatically things that we will withhold. There are certain things that we will be able to withhold, but our team has to go into the Attorney General's office and ask permission to do so. But all of that is tied to that 10-day window. So it's stuff that we have to stay on top of, and our staff has to work closely with internal staff and the requester. So that is it. Got you through quickly and get you on to your next report.
Thank you, Jessica. Definitely important information. Appreciate that. The next topic on the agenda is staff reports. This will be a standing topic on every time we get together, essentially. Normally, that will be an opportunity for the different divisions within the agency to report to us things that are going on that are germane to fuel metering or quality. This time it may be a little bit longer because those folks are introducing themselves to you and sharing with you a little bit about what that division or department does within the agency. So this may be a pretty lengthy item, but it's valuable information. First off, we're going to go back to Jessica. She's going to talk to us about the General Counsel division.
All right. So I'm back. Let's talk about the General Counsel's division. So not only will you see us here at board meetings with the advisory board team, with Mary and Delia, we will be a resource to you presenting rules, working with, we'll be working to facilitate work groups, working with department staff. So you'll see us quite a bit in that context. However, you may not see us in the other contexts because we're behind the scenes or doing other things. So the General Counsel is the commission and the department's internal law firm that provides a wide range of general services daily. So we are led by Brad Bowman and 2 deputies. And we're also a team of 10 assistant general counsels who are each assigned several programs of our nearly 40 programs. And so each of us is a lead attorney on those many programs. So we're subject matter experts on a few programs throughout the agency. So we also have numerous legal assistants who help make it possible for us to handle all of those moving parts on a daily basis, whether it's working with us, working with department staff, working with licensees on so many different things. So we talked extensively about open meetings and rules, but we also do other things. For example, we review contested cases that go before our commission and provide recommendations to the commissioners. So contested cases are those that have gone through the enforcement process and have resulted in fines or licensing actions by the department. We also oversee litigation that affects the department, whether we're being sued or whether we have to seek an injunction to prevent someone who has a history of repeat violations or is putting the public at risk. Those are things that we work closely with the Office of the Attorney General on because they represent us. So we also have a contracts attorney that works closely with our financial services division to review contracts and procurements. And we have staff that works with our licensees to collect fines that are owed to the agency. We have an open records team. We talked about them earlier, and they handle a huge workload annually in response to the requests that we receive, number of open records requests. So their lead attorney oversees a team of legal assistants to coordinate with staff throughout the agency to make sure we meet those deadlines and provide information as expeditiously as possible. Our records management coordinator ensures that the agency is complying with state requirements and sets forth how those state requirements basically tell us how long we have to maintain our records, how they need to be maintained, and she makes sure that we are doing that properly. And then when it's time to dispose of those records, she makes sure that we do that as well. Delia, will you please share that PowerPoint for me, please? So here are just a couple of interesting numbers for us. So we talked briefly about rules, and these numbers have even changed from last month. So during fiscal year 2021, we filed 47 proposals, rulemaking proposals. We adopted 41, and so for various reasons, we may not have adopted all 47. It may have been that during the next fiscal year, we adopted some of them because it just kind of ran over. In this fiscal year, so in the first 4 or 5 months of this year already, we've already filed 36 proposals, and we've already adopted 24. So we've already been very, very busy as of now. So we have 79 pending proposals. So this is at any phase of drafting. So this could be, we know this is on the horizon, we know that it's already been filed, it's been adopted, it's in the rule review process. 79. That's 79 spread out among the 10 attorneys and legal staff. So going on to the open records. So like I said, we have the open records attorney and her staff. They processed in the last fiscal year, 4,900 requests, which is crazy. It's a lot of records. That's among paper, electronic review. Not only that, they have to go through and redact. Redacting is basically blocking out the information we cannot release. For example, they may be redacting out those dates of birth or driver's license numbers, email addresses. So they've got to go through and make sure all of that is withheld when they release information. They also wrote 45 briefs. That means when we are requesting permission to withhold information, they are drafting those to the Attorney General, explaining why we have the authority to release, to withhold that information. They've got to do all of that within that 10-day window. So on top of responding to those 4,900 requests, they've got to do that within the 10 days and get those submitted. This year already, in these first 4 months since December, or through December, they've already responded to 2,600 requests and filed 9 briefs. So we stay very busy as a division, and we have lots of things going on. So if there's something we can help you with, we will try, and if not, we will get you to the right people that can. So that's what we've got for you this morning.
Thank you again, Jessica. I'm sure we'll be hearing from you again later on in the agenda. Next up is the licensing division. We'll hear from Dee Dee McEachern and maybe from Laura Hernandez, I believe.
Good morning, Jason. You're one of the first people who got my name pronounced correctly. Thank you so much. My name is Dee Dee McEachern. I am the Director of Licensing with the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. And just as our name implies, we do licensing. So we look at pre-education credentials. We put my glasses back on. We do fingerprinting and employment history, insurance bonding, net worth requirements, and continuing education courses for our licensees. And just so that you get a background of how it all flows through. So an application comes through our mailroom first, and then we get it. And then it starts down 2 parallel paths, one of which is processing the license application, the second of which is doing a criminal history background check. The enforcement division reviews the background checks, and make sure everything is clear on that. And then once it's clear, they let us know, hey, this application is good to issue. And then if all the license requirements have been met, we will issue the license. We have 71 people, and we issue licenses to a licensee population of 860,000 plus. Licensees are issued to individuals and businesses, just as you guys have your service techs and your I can't remember stations. We'll say that. That's not the correct word, but yes. The 39 programs include 223 unique license types for a population of 860,000. 73% of our licensee population are individuals, with the remaining 27% are businesses. Texas Legislature is the body who ultimately decides if a new program will be transferred to TDLR, and that's happened many times. And what that has happened is it's caused us to get multiple licensing systems. So each time a program gets transferred from to TDLR, often that licensing system comes with it. Right now, we're working with 9 different licensing systems. However, your program is one of the ones that's being moved to one of our main databases. We call it TULIP, Texas Umbrella Licensing Information Project. So you're not one of those outliers that are different systems. So that we're 90% of have everything done in TULIP now. The licensing division is cross-trained to organize and we're organized into teams to facilitate cross-training. Each person is trained on how to process every license type by their team, and teams are grouped by similarity of program, licensing requirements, and the licensing database they have to use. One of the things we do is when we get peaks in workload, like every year in the fall, we get about 20,000 cosmetology student permits. Those are new cosmetology students. And we end up issuing those cosmetology students permits because it's a peaking workload. We transfer that across the entire division, and everybody spends an hour a day on it. Well, that allows, another additional 36 hours or what have you, working on that one topic that wouldn't have been done. And then your other 7 hours of their day that's not normally processing these goes back to their other job. So it works really well to cross-train and spread that work around if we have to. Delia, if you move down to our performance measures. So performance measures are something that each agency has to keep as a report card to the agency, legislators, essentially. Sorry, I'm having trouble talking this morning. I'm not going to read all of these. I just want to hit the key points. And it starts, obviously, FY 19, 20, and 21. So I'm going to read out the 21 numbers to you. So our percent of new individual licenses issued in 10 days, that's just that. It's the new individuals only. And we're at 93% issued within 10 days. Percent of renewed licenses renewed in 7 days is at 94.7. New issued online is 92.2. Individuals renewed online is 96.3. Totally new issued license to individuals is 138,888. That was all of last year, all of fiscal year 21. The total numbers of renewals was 316,192. Our total numbers of facilities licenses was 46,590. Our renewed licenses to facilities was 132,889. And then I'll just jump down to the total licensee population of 865,49. So lots and lots of numbers, but we are very proud that most of those numbers are high, or percentage-wise. So we do a good job at do our best at trying to get licenses out the door as soon as possible. This is where the test is going to come at the end of this meeting. So be ready. We're going to ask you to recite every one of these. No, we're not. But anyway, this is the list of the more than 200 license types that we issue. Obviously, that's one of the reasons we break up into teams, because there's no way one employee can learn how to do all that. So it helps us break it all up. So the person that you guys are going to be working with most often is the manager for what we call the tools team. And her name is Laura Hernandez. And I'm going to let her jump on now, and she's going to do the staff report.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Good morning, board members. My name is Laura Hernandez, the manager of the tools team. My team handles the applications, renewals, incoming questions for the fuel metering and quality program, as well as 8 other programs. Before you is the statistics that I provide at board meetings. And these are the basic statistics. If there's any different ones after looking at this or reviewing it that you'd like for us to find or report to you, we can definitely do that. These statistics, the first one is for service technicians. It'll have fiscal year 2021, and then underneath that, it'll have fiscal year 2022, but only the first quarter, because those are the numbers that are available at that time. So we have the service technicians. They'll tell you how many new applications, how many were done online. And you can see there's an asterisk there because that function was not available until June 2021. So there wasn't any online for that fiscal year 2021. Then there's the percentage that renewed online, and then the total population. Underneath that is the service companies, then the suppliers, the distributors, jobbers, and wholesalers. Those are all together. And then the device facilities will be the last category. And where it says NA for percentage online or renewal, and that means it's not applicable because the online function is not available for those programs to use that online system yet. And if you have any questions about these statistics or would like to see other numbers reported again, please let me know, and I'll be happy to assist any way we can.
Thank you, Laura and Dee Dee. I'll call on Jacqueline Rush now to introduce us to the customer service division.
Hi, good morning, board members. It is a pleasure to be here on this historic first board meeting. I want to introduce you to our customer service division. I am one of 3 managers in the division, and I'll tell you a little bit about ourselves. The customer service division is a mission-driven, hardworking group of co-creators. We work in a fast-paced environment and thrive on innovation and service. We have a passion for solving problems collaboratively, valuing teamwork, respect, and open and free communication. Our team includes frontline customer service reps, embedded service reps, ombudsmen, quality training performance analysts, managers, and our director. We communicate with our licensed population and the general public via phone, email, and social media. We serve as guides, educating and assisting applicants through the application process for all programs. We are the first point of contact and many times the only contact our customers will have with the agency. Our focus is on engaging customers and resolving issues. We are here for the customer success. We believe in reducing customer effort and taking a proactive approach to improving the customer experience. TDLR regulates a diverse array of industries and occupations, but our goal is to respond as accurately and efficiently as possible. Management understands that exceptional service is an attitude that is cultivated through training, support, and experience. Here you'll see an overview of our top 10 program contacts, and you'll see that fuel metering and quality comes in our top 10 at number 10. And so that's just sort of an overview of what our most frequent calls are from various programs from the top 10. And then we also have contact center statistics for fiscal years 2021 and what we have so far for 2022. For this particular program, Ms. Hernandez's licensing team takes on the bulk of the emails. We'll get occasional emails, but our main focus for this program is phone calls. And that hopefully gives you a little bit of an overview of the division. And I would also like to present the statistics that we have for phone calls so far. Let's see, we've got fiscal years 2021. And again, what we have so far for 2022, a little bit of a closer look. And those calls, initially when the program first came to us, we got a lot of application instruction questions, renewal instruction questions. How do I file a complaint? How can I get in touch with somebody to answer a technical question? Those tend to be our top kinds of questions that we receive on the phones. So that concludes my overview and the report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
You're
Next up
welcome. Thank
is
you.
the Enforcement Division. We'll hear from John Medlock and Tony Reed.
Good morning, presenting officer and board members. My name is John Medlock. I am the chief prosecutor for the Enforcement Division. A little bit of an overview. As you can see here in front of you, we have kind of the way that the Enforcement Division is structured. We're led by our director, Ron Foster, and we have 3 sections within the Enforcement Division because those kind of mirror kind of the life cycle of the case. We've got our intake section, which takes in all the complaints that we receive. They're led by Cheryl Wilson. Then we have our investigation section, and we have different regions within the state where investigators are situated to investigate all these complaints that come in, and they're led by Art Arevalo. And then the prosecution section, where the complaints or the cases eventually go for a decision and determination on what to do with them, are actually divided between 2 managers, myself with the 17 prosecutors that we have on staff, and then also our legal assistants, which are led by Jackie Revilla, and the 31 legal assistants that she has, and along with the administrative assistants. A little bit about what each section does. So the intake section does kind of what you would think. They take in all these complaints, and their kind of initial job is to look at these complaints to determine whether or not we have jurisdiction, i.e., is this one of the programs that we regulate. You've heard about a lot of the different programs that we regulate. So they have to take a look, determine whether or not what is being complained of is something that we actually do regulate, in fact. And then once they've kind of made that ultimate determination, maybe ask some initial kind of background questions from the complainant, they'll determine whether or not a case needs to be open. Once they've made that determination, they'll kick that over to our investigation section. And they'll do exactly what you would think they would do in the investigative section. They'll ask the who, what, when, where, how, why questions of the different parties. They'll also see if there's any additional witnesses that need to be interviewed, collect any documents, photographs, video that may be necessary for that particular case in which they're investigating. Eventually, they will write a short report, an investigative report, and they will kick that over to the prosecutors. Again, each one of these prosecutors are teamed up with a legal assistant, and the job of the prosecution section is to determine what goes on with the case. Maybe there wasn't sufficient evidence to determine a violation. Maybe there is, and we have to go through a contested case process, or maybe we can come to some kind of settlement agreement if we do issue one of those notice of alleged violations. But that's kind of the breakdown of what each of the really sections does. I'll go a little bit more depth of a life cycle of case here in a second, but we get these complaints from about 3 different kind of areas, right? The vast majority of our complaints come in from the public. We call these consumer complaints. They could be members of just the general public because they've come in contact with one of our licensees, and for whatever reason, something went wrong, so that leads them to filing a complaint with our intake section. Could be members of the industry filing a complaint because they've noticed something wrong when they've gone back out on a job, to follow up on somebody else, and they may have seen something wrong, so they want to file a complaint. The next kind of a group of complaints that we have are departmental complaints. We have different areas, our regulatory programs management section, and also our field inspection section, that go out on different inspections through various of our different programs, and they will actually write inspection reports, and they will send that over to the Enforcement Division for us to prosecute, because they might, during the course of some of these inspections, find something that was wrong or something that wasn't up to code, or whatever the case might be, but they'll file those complaints with us. The other source of a lot of our complaints is our criminal history. You've heard a little bit about it, but each one of our licensees or prospective licensees undergoes a criminal background check. We do that for each initial application and each renewal application. What we do is we have different criminal conviction guidelines for each one of the different programs that we have. And through that process, we will check to see if there are any criminal convictions for that person, and if they do, we'll look to see if they match kind of some of the criminal conviction guidelines for that program, and then the attorneys will make a determination whether or not, based on that criminal conviction, that person should either continue to have their license or whether or not they should get their initial license. In addition to that, the criminal conviction guidelines, which I just spoke of, there's the complaint resolution manual that the prosecutors follow. This kind of is a guideline of how we will prosecute these cases. So that way, and these are located on our website, and essentially, it's kind of the roadmap of how a case will go through our process and the steps that we will generally take in each of these cases. Along with that is also the enforcement plan. Each one of these different programs has their own enforcement plan, and based on the different programs, each one might have some little bit different types of violations and or penalties that might be associated with the different violations. So we have these enforcement plans to strive for consistency across the program so that each of the different prosecutors that are working, especially particularly in the fuel metering quality program, they will go after similar violations in a similar way, in a similar fashion. So that way that there's that consistency across the board when it comes to these programs. Next, as you can see here, we kind of have a flow chart of kind of how the life cycle of this would be more of a consumer kind of based complaint. So again, like I said earlier, when the intake section gets that complaint in, they will review it to determine whether or not we have jurisdiction. Once that determination has been made, it will go over to our investigation section. They will send out letters. They will contact the complainant. They will contact the respondent. They will gather whatever documents they might need to gather. Maybe there's photographs, maybe video, audio files, whatever it could be. There could be additional witnesses that might need be contacted. In certain like health-related type cases, there may be an expert that may need to be contacted to determine whether or not standard of care type violations have occurred. But they'll take all that information on. They will not determine whether or not a violation has occurred. Their job is merely to be a fact finder to collect all the information. Once they do that, they'll write a report, the investigative report, and they'll kick it over to the prosecution section. And once they've done that, it's up to the prosecutor to determine what needs to happen. Essentially, the prosecutor has about three options. Maybe there's just not enough evidence. The state has the burden. It's a preponderance of the evidence is the burden that we have to prove these allegations based on. And it might just be a situation that somebody was filing a complaint because they just weren't happy, but it may not have risen to the level of a violation. And so we will close those cases for usually insufficient evidence. It could be a situation where the complainant and the respondent have gotten together, resolved their differences, and the complainant wants to withdraw that complaint, and that's another reason we can close a case. There may be situations where there looks like there was a violation of one of our laws and rules, but maybe the respondent has done something to remedy those or mitigate that violation. And so we don't want to necessarily pursue it in a formal disciplinary way. So we'll close that case with a warning, kind of just let them know it's like, hey, look, we know you did something wrong, but you have kind of taken some steps to kind of fix it or remedy it. So we're going to go ahead and close this case with a warning. If we think that the violation is severe enough that we need to go through the formal contested case process or potentially the formal contested case process, we'll go ahead and issue that notice of alleged violation. Once we do that, each one of our notice of alleged violations gives that respondent the right to take us to a hearing through the contested case process. It also allows for the respondent to settle that case. So in it, on the back page of every one of our notice of alleged violations, there is an actual settlement agreement where the respondent, if they choose, can say, hey, you know what, I did something wrong. I'm willing to settle this case, and I'll sign the back of this form. And we'll go into a settlement agreement, which will be reduced down to an agreed order signed by our executive director. Again, sometimes we don't hear anything from the respondent. If we don't hear anything from the respondent at all, once that 25 days has run, we'll issue another letter called a notice of default. Once that notice of default is issued, that gives them an additional time period to hopefully the respondent will get back in contact with us so we can either work out some kind of settlement or prepare to go to a hearing. If that doesn't work and they don't reach out at all, we'll go ahead and issue a default order for a full penalty and or a full sanction, whatever that might be. And then the last thing is sometimes respondents will say, you know what, I did not commit this violation. I'm willing to take you to a hearing to prove my innocence. And that's the contested case process. Those hearings are held before the State Office of Administrative Hearings, before an administrative law judge. And those hearings are just kind of like what you would think they are. They are a full administrative hearing before a judge. There is no right to a jury trial, but again, the state has that burden. There are opening statements and cross-examining of witnesses and the presentation of evidence, just like you would in a regular hearing. A couple of the differences, again, like I said, no right of hearing or no right of a jury, but at the same time too, What the ALJ will do is instead of at the close of closing arguments, they won't decide the case right then. They'll take it under advisement and they'll draft what they call a proposal for decision. Essentially, it's their recommendation on what should happen based on the evidence and the testimony that they've heard. Essentially, they've got about one of three options. They can say, state, we think you've carried your burden and the penalty and or sanction that asking for is appropriate, and that's our recommendation. They could say, state, we think you've carried the burden, but the penalty and or sanctions are a little bit high, so we're going to reduce that a little bit, and they'll put that in their recommendation. And then finally, they could say, state, we don't think you've carried your burden at all, and so therefore the respondent doesn't owe the state anything, and there's no sanction to be had. What happens after that PFD is issued? It will go before the Commission on Licensing and Regulation. Our attorneys have about a 5-minute kind of what I would call like a Reader's Digest presentation that they will make to the commissioners. The respondent has the exact same opportunity to make those either through themselves or through their attorneys presentations before the Commission. And then the Commission on Licensing and Regulation is going to ask whatever questions of either the parties that they want to, and they'll actually come up with a formal decision that day, and it will be reduced down to a commission order. Usually they either will adopt the PFD as it's been issued, or they'll maybe make some slight changes or modifications based on all the evidentiary record from the SOA trial and the questions that they may have asked during that case. And then the last page, real quick, is just some kind of statistics overall for the Enforcement Division over the last couple of fiscal years. Again, our fiscal years run from September through August. So as you can see here, on average, over the last 2 fiscal years, we've done a little bit over 10,000 cases opened every year. That doesn't mean that those are the only cases that we got, because again, there were a bunch of cases that we got that we didn't open. But we did about, on average, we get about 10,000 cases per year. As you can see, we churn through about 9,000 cases a year. And if you can see, the vast majority in both years are consumer complaints, with criminal histories kind of taking up second, and then departmental complaints kind of rounding out the pie there. As you can see there, we do a lot of agreed orders, and there's also a lot of default orders that we do. At the same time, too, the very last thing, one of the things that we do strive to do is try to make the consumer whole as much as possible, and that's captured in our consumer restitution. As you can see in fiscal year 2020, a little over $183,000 was money directly given back to the consumer versus being some kind of a penalty or sanction assessed against the respondent. And then nearly this past fiscal year, nearly $200,000. So really proud of those efforts and trying to make the consumers whole in whatever way we can. Now, the rest of our report will be given by Tony Reed. This is going to be more of what you'll see during the course of these meetings going forward. So if you guys don't have any questions for me, I will turn it over to Tony to give the rest of this report.
Good morning. Anthony Reed. I am a prosecutor in the Enforcement Division. I'm going to go over the nuts and bolts reports that you normally see. These stats are for fiscal year 2022 through November. So really we're talking September, October, November, 3 months. The key points on this, the number of pending cases is 733. That's I think a little high. It's down from the previous fiscal year, was over 800. We had in the transportation group of prosecutors, we had a retirement, and we replaced that person with 2 people, bringing more resources so we could speed things up a bit. And we had some more turnover, but now we've got 4 people, and we've got the cases are coming down. This is the source of cases. FMQ motor fuel is almost exclusively consumer driven. Sticker on the pump says, if you want to make a complaint, here's how, and consumers do. Moving down to outcomes, This fiscal year, 10 agreed orders, 348 cases informally resolved. That's warning letters and closings. I'd like to add to what Mr. Medlock said. If a case is closed, it means we didn't have sufficient evidence of a violation or there wasn't a violation. Either could be true. With a warning, we look at the history the licensee has, what steps they took to reimburse if appropriate or remedy. And if we see that they're doing the right thing, we tend to go with the warning. TDLR is interested in helping licensees with compliance. We want everyone to comply. We're not, that's our goal, not seeing how many notices of violation we can generate. The top violations at opening, this is coming out of intake. It can change. Fuel quality, fuel quantity, and devices not working. That's kind of what you'd expect to be the most common violations. Going down to the disciplinary action, device not in working order, unlicensed, or failure to cooperate. The thing that flips the quantity issue is that most quantity claims, short measure claims, are closed because we don't have sufficient evidence. We send it with all of those, we send an investigator out. They've got the 5-gallon metering jug, and they test the device, and a lion's share of those are found within specifications. We close the case. With fuel quality, if we send an investigator out, sometimes it's been too long. The complainant waited a week or two to file a complaint. We try to get an investigator out within a day or two, and we're pretty good at that. But doesn't, there could have been 3 or 4 deliveries. Quality cases, if the consumer is reimbursed, we generally will warn, but we're keeping track of how many warnings you're getting. Continuing, this is the numbers. One thing that I noticed that I wasn't aware of, motor fuel is one of 39 programs, but has 10% of the cases opened. So you're getting, we're getting a lot of cases, but if you look at the percentage of cases resulting in disciplinary action, it's 1.48% compared to TDLR overall, 13.41. So, and this comports with my experience over the last couple of years with motor fuel. Most licensees take quick action. They do the right thing, and we issue a lot of warning letters, and we issue a lot of closing letters. Source of cases, consumers. see. High
Wait,
number,
are we allowed to ask questions?
yes,
Okay. So you said most of these are consumer driven. Do you do routine inspections proactively?
I actually don't know the answer to
This
that
is Jessica.
question.
Thank you.
This is Jessica. We do not do routine inspections. Our inspections are complaint based, so we do not do routine inspections. We have the capacity to do risk-based inspections as a result of what we were delegated by Sunset, but we do not do routine inspections. So what we do have is every 2 years, our registrants licensees are required to have what's called device performance reviews performed by a service company. So that means every 2 years, a merchant must have a service company come out and have their devices inspected, if necessary, calibrated, tested to make sure they're in full compliance and working order. So that essentially becomes like an inspection, but TDLR does not perform that device performance review. That's the responsibility of the merchant to perform that testing, that device performance review every 2 years. And so before they can get their devices renewed in that 2-year period, they must certify that that has been performed.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Jessica. Again, on these statistics, the lion's share of the cases were informally resolved. And now we're in fiscal year 2021, so we're looking at a whole year. If we can go down. Can we scroll up, please? Alleged violations at opening. Again, fuel quality, fuel quantity, device not working. And the disciplinary action. And then I have some case highlights. In Janub, we had an agreed order was accepted, and an administrative penalty of $1,875 and a 1-year probated suspension. The respondent failed to renew the license at 2 locations and was required by probation to do so within 15 days. And they had a problem with a diesel nozzle failing to hold 0. River Trace Retail accepted a penalty of $3,000 for failure to cooperate with the department. An investigator requested documents and they weren't provided. We take that seriously. We can't help you with compliance if we don't get cooperation. Stripes is another failure to cooperate. The respondent would not provide enough fuel for the 5-gallon test. So the investigator, excuse me. So the investigator could not complete a calibration. Tidwell Fuels was a device failing to hold 0, and it dispensed a short measure, which is when the consumer is not getting what they paid for, we pay attention to that. Sam's East was an octane issue. It was marked for 93, but we took a sample, took it to the lab, and it was actually 91. And Murphy Oil, this is one I particularly wanted to point out because this was closed with a warning instead of a notice of alleged violation and a penalty. There was a cross drop of premium and diesel fuel. Obviously, the cars didn't like that very much. And several had problems. The respondent took care of reimbursing the consumers. They took care of fixing the fuel tanks, and so they got a warning. Their record was good. We do keep track of that, but as we want them to be in compliance, and we use the warning letter as a tool for that, to keep track of it, and also to give honest mistakes a break. What questions do you have?
Tony, this is Jason. I have, there was a document referenced earlier. I think it was the complaint resolution procedures plan. Is that something that could be made available to the board members?
Are you talking about the penalty matrix?
No,
Penalty plan?
I took it to be some document that kind of describes or codifies the process for complaint management. Maybe John can speak to that.
Yes, we can get you a copy of that complaint resolution manual.
I don't know what details it goes into. I'm just kind of curious to see what the official procedures are.
Yeah, we can get you a copy of that, sir.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions for the Enforcement Division? Before we move on, we've been at this about an hour and a half. The current time is 11:22. I'd like to take maybe a 10-minute break. Any objections to that? I don't see any. So let's reconvene at 11:32. to order. The current time is 11:32. I believe we left off with enforcement. Next up is the Education and Examination Division. We'll hear from Michael Strong.
Good morning, Chairman and members, and thank you all for your service today. My name is Michael Strong. I am one of the managers in the Education and Examination Division, also what we call, commonly refer to ourselves as E&E. The Education and Examination Division is a small team, but we like to say that we're a small division with big responsibilities. Our objective and our daily duties are overseeing the requirements for examinations, continuing education, courses, continuing education providers, pre-licensure education, regulation of the schools, providers for various industries. We currently have 20 staff members that are involved in the regulation of these requirements. We have one program director, 2 managers, 2 supervisors, and a whole team of staff from management analysts to our accreditation and certification specialists that are managing 31 of the 39 programs that we have in Texas. Earlier, you heard Dee Dee, the director for licensing, talking about some of the challenges that we have with multiple licensing databases. In some ways, our division functions much in the same way as licensing, and that we are licensing schools and providers and continuing education courses. And we're working in those same databases, so we have those same challenges. In addition to that, we're providing review of curriculum, improving schools, site locations, audits, and various other activities within our industries. One of those is obviously our FMQ. We focus heavily on a lot of items in FMQ as far as examinations. So when we brought this program over, we had a couple examinations that had not been updated in over a decade. In development, and part of our examination process is to maintain, develop, enhance, or create examinations for a lot of these regulated industries. With FMQ, we have what is called an exam review committee. It is in conjunction with our subject matter experts within the industries, with our psychometricians that are employed through our examination vendor, and utilizing or referencing and code books, regulations, laws, rules, and those subject matter experts and the psychometrician help us to update and enhance or develop these examinations. With FMQ, that was something we did in late 2020, back in October and November of 2020. We met twice with an exam review committee to update our exams for this industry. Moving on, you can kind of get a snapshot, as you see on the screen right now, of kind of the broad scope of what we are dealing with. This is a snapshot. There's over 4,500 continuing education courses and curricula that we review, we approve, and we audit as well. You heard mentions of risk-based inspections. Our team is doing risk-based audits on programs that are out there, curriculum. We're reviewing if we get customer complaints, we see deficiencies, failures, whatever it might be. We're using that data to drive us to perform those audits on those curriculum or those providers that are out there. We have several large industries, from barber, cosmetology schools, driver education, a wide berth of areas that we're regulating at that point in time. In our examination area, or performance, we have over 18 of the agency's programs that currently have licensing examinations for those. That's over 63 license types that we provide those examinations for. And every year we have seen a continual rise in the number of examinations that have been performed. Last year was actually our largest year yet, with over 75,000 examinations that were given. Part of that is due to, in 2020, COVID hit and there were a lot of site closures, and there was a hold on a lot of examinations. Our team and working with our vendor, we've created opportunities that exist in the examination world with electronic exams. Many of our exams have a practical assessment that is done as well, where we have virtual practical assessments and that are being given as well. Those tools and everything else allowed us to meet that rising demand here in 2021 to service individuals that were not able to take their exams during the COVID closures, also and make sure that there were enough availability and seats to serve all of the citizens of Texas. If you can scroll down. A big part of, back to the outreach and stuff. A big part of our division as well is our training and public outreach. You know, obviously examination is one part of our division title, but education is another piece of it. Our division is focused on providing education into every customer contact that we have, whether that's an email, it's a phone call, or many of our other outreach activities. We have a school liaison that you saw inside of our staffing chart. And that school liaison services a lot of our industries where if a school has questions about how to maintain compliance or work a system or anything else, they go out and they teach these schools. It could be multiple schools at one time, but we have that service that we offer to everyone where we go through everything in that industry from top to bottom about what their school should be doing, how to report hours, regulations, requirements, whatever it may need to be. We do public trainings, conferences, public outreach. We especially do it with our driver education, motorcycling community, where we remain very active in those areas as well. As I touched on earlier, we have the exam review committees. We host at least 10 exam review committees every year, sometimes more. If there are legislative requirements or implementations that require an update to an exam, we obviously will hold those for that. If not, we do maintenance in every exam. We look at on at least a bi-yearly review for those exams to make sure that we don't have an exam that's such in this field when we inherited it had not been updated in over a decade. We want to make sure that every single one of our examinations is current. The questions are true to the nature of the industry, that they are referenced correctly, and that they are updated to speak factually to what the industry is actually doing out there. We also perform contract management. Like I said, we're a small division with big responsibilities. We are, in doing a lot of these functions with our exams, we as a staff of 20 cannot sit down to administer every examination. So we do contract with an exam vendor. And they make all of these exams available to everybody. So we maintain and monitor that contract. Several of our other programs have workshops or continuing education requirements that are all monitored as well. And our staff, our management analysts and our managers manage those contracts daily as well. I believe we currently have 9 contracts throughout various functions within this agency. Continue now.
Thank you, Michael. We'll now hear from Mr. Eric Beverly from the Field Inspection Division.
Mr. Harris, I apologize. I still have the statistics.
My apologies.
It's okay. As stated, our function for FMQ, for education examination, is the FMQ examinations. I wanted to bring to your attention just kind of our statistics that we had here briefly. You'll see for the second quarter for December, January, and February, we only have one. At the time of this report, there was not any, most of our data available for that quarter. So in future advisory boards, you will see hopefully completed quarters throughout there. But if you go back and look at our pass rates on this, I know it's sometimes always a question on, pass rates, if they're too low, too high, or just right. What we're seeing here is, pretty typical, especially when we update an examination that hasn't been touched in a long time. But we will always, if anybody ever has any questions about the exam and the exam review committee process, but we're happy to expand on that. We often say the exam pass rate is what it is. We constantly review all examination items for overperforming, underperforming items. And every candidate within the candidate information bulletin for every examination that we have on our website, there is a bulletin that's out there that lists the fees, the topics of discussion, or not discussion, for examination that are on these exams. And at the end of their exam, they're able to write comments if they have questions or concerns about any item on there. And our psychometrician, our subject matter experts, and our staff here at E&E, we get together in those ERCs, we review those continually, and make sure that our items are performing as well as they can. And lastly, we wanted to give an update that,
I'm sorry, Wes Nance, is that the results strictly for examinations? That's not licensing? That doesn't have anything, I mean, other than taking that test, that's pass fail on the test?
yes, sir. This is the pass fail on the test. These are our total examinations. This is, in some areas we can break out first time pass rates versus the overall pass rates. This is an overall pass rate for this industry. But it is not tied to the licensing requirements. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did, but I've got one more now.
Yes,
has the process changed to the degree that since it was TDA, as far as taking the test? Are they still allowed to bring the open book in with them when they take the test?
I don't believe we changed any processes. I would actually defer to.
I can answer that for Nance. I can answer that for Wes. So the test now, they've restructured it. It's completely changed to what it was, where you would identify chapter, subchapter, and context, and now it's more of a I guess normalized to what you'd see as a test, where it would state rules and you would then have to go in and use common sense and factor through the book. But it is open book. It's over the TDLR book, the skimmer book, the NIST handbook, and it's all open book, and it has got a lot more challenging for anybody. I would say.
That seems to me like an extremely low pass rate that I've never experienced before, and I'm trying to figure out why.
This is Jessica. I'm sorry to interrupt, Wes. So one of the first things that, I shouldn't say one of the first things, one of the things that we did with the service technician exam was step back and examine it. And we worked closely with PSI, the exam company, and with our subject matter experts, which included Adam, and our internal staff in evaluating the test. The test had not been evaluated, changed by TDA in over 15 years. And as you can imagine, questions get stale, information gets stale, and it gets stagnant. And so when you're retaking a test every 5 years, it's the exact same test. And so this test was revised. And so as a matter of practice, the questions were made to be more practical. And so they were looked at, and the information was basically put together in a guide. And so the testees can come in and bring in they're able to use that NIST guide. All of the information is taken from there. And so when they're taking the test, they're able to use that practical handbooks. But it was revised significantly from the original test. And the reason why was to make sure that for those particular testing categories, they had the proficiency to do what it is that they were doing. But it was changed from what it originally was 15 years ago.
Well, we need to make sure that all of the companies in the state of Texas are aware. I mean, I know Adam and his company is aware of it, that there are other books being allowed to be used to take that test. My people aren't aware of that. So that puts a lot of people at an unfair advantage, not just saying my people, but I don't know who else is not aware that there were other books. I don't know the TDLR book, and I don't know the other book he was talking about other than the NSTM.
Mr. Nance.
That's the only book that we've ever been allowed to bring in. And if that's changing, We need to make that public for everyone to know that.
When you
Mr.
sign up, well, actually I've had some people reach out and we've sent multiple guys to go take it. And when you go fill out on the PSI, because it still goes through the PSI exams, they actually give you a list of items and books and certain documents that you can. It's the same protocol. They just give you that list of stuff to bring and what not to bring. And I mean, everything's the same. It's just they've made the test a little bit more complicated. And I say complicated because it's going over more of rules, laws, and regulations that has changed, and it's making sure you know it, and not necessarily something that's an easy fly through it real quick.
Thank you, Adam. And in addition to that, as I stated earlier, the candidate information bulletins that are on our website list all the references and topics that will be in there. I'm happy to provide that to you at the end of this meeting as well for your review. We always try to make sure that we're communicating these requirements wherever they might be. As you heard Adam say, our exam vendor is providing those items as well. The TDLR handbook is really just the laws and rules regarding this program. So all of those things are already publicly available anyway. But the other books and everything it's still open book for you.
Mr. Nance, Mary Winston, TLR, if this is something that we can look at, we have a public information officer. She's not on the meeting, Ms. Tila Monge. If this is something staff can look at about maybe getting a little ticker on the website or on your page, or RPM and E&E, which includes Ford, Michael here. So if you feel that this is something that maybe the public and the applicants haven't been aware of, or the test takers, we'll look on our end and see if there's anything else we can do to get that word out, okay?
Well, I didn't want to jump ahead. I noticed that part of our agenda today was to discuss maybe, I don't know,
Continuing education.
continuous education, and maybe prior some training classes or whatever. I put on a 2-day class for all my technicians before we go in and take this test and stuff. But I did that before. It just got a little bit more complicated. I mean, that was I don't want to say the goal, but I guess making it a give me test versus something that you should actually know the book. That's what PSI, and when we were in there making this test, was all come to agreement and come to terms with that it should not be a gimme test, and that's why the complications of it was pushed by PSI. Is all their tests are like this, so they agree that this one should be that way. So I don't know.
This is just the first one out. It's all, we're gonna get there. So thank you. I think we got some good information to move forward. And we'll finish if it's okay with you, Mr. Nance. We'll continue with the agenda and we can discuss this further offline if you like.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Excellent questions. And in closing, I just wanted to give a general update for changes happening in education examination as far as how our public contacts are received. We have had multiple, as we've inherited multiple licensing systems, we've also, in kind, always used multiple email boxes. So every industry was having its own email box. This was just a deluge of emails to our staff, and having to jump between every single inbox all the time wasn't working very smart. So the Education and Examination Division has transitioned to the Dynamics system, which is kind of an email and web form integration. So now when customers contact us, they're providing on our website, it's kind of a drop down where you select your industry you're contacting about. You're selecting your reason that you're contacting us about, your information, your licensing information. You're able to upload attachments and put comments or any statement that you want in there. And the reason that's a huge benefit for us is it has allowed our division to start using analytics and data to address concerns. So if we do see concerns where candidates are questioning exams, or they're upset with not getting a specific service they need, or they have questions that are not being answered or fulfilled, that gives us the data now, instead of just having a generic email where we can't really cipher any information from, to go in and make changes to our website, to update information, or to provide our outreach and and education services to send out a listserv, as you heard Mary saying with TILA or anywhere else, or go out and speak with the industry. We can actually see what the industry's needs are, what their wants and desires are. And we've been really excited about that, and it's been very successful for us. We just implemented that in November, and we've already started making changes through multiple industries across the board. And then we monitor every industry, FMQ alike, and if we start getting or seeing different trends or needs that are coming from those individuals, it allows us to respond in kind. With that being said, that concludes my report, and I'm open to any of the questions you might have.
Thanks, Michael. Again, I apologize for trying to cut you off early.
Okay.
All right, now moving on to field inspection divisions, Mr. Beverly.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Eric Beverly, Director of Field Inspections, Presiding Officer Harris, and advisory board members. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Congratulations on your appointments, and thank you for your willingness to serve our fellow Texans. I'll be providing a divisional overview today. You won't be seeing us on a routine basis because, as was previously discussed, Field Inspections Division does not perform FMQ-related inspections. The Field Inspections Division is in many ways the face of TDOR. Our field inspectors perform on-site and virtual inspections to ensure regulated industries operate in a safe and ethical manner. In the last 3 years, on average, we performed 25,500 inspections per year. And to date, as a result of an innovation from the, and you can stay on that page, and as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and our response to it and innovations resulting from that, we've also conducted more than 5,000 virtual inspections to date across a variety of programs. So you see before you our organizational chart. I'll highlight the support analytics and training team. The lead facilitator, and administrative assistant provide performance measure reporting and inspections monitoring, supply distribution and travel support. The two liaisons provide training, serve as inspector advocates, and maintain and develop our standard operating procedures. The Field Inspections Division is divided into 4 regions: the Central Region, East, North, and South, with inspectors dedicated and living in each region. If you can move to the next page, please. This map provides an overview of our 4 regions. Counties that are shaded in blue indicate the physical presence of an inspector in that county. And if there are more than 1 inspector in a county, that's indicated through the numbering system. So for example, in Harris County, we have 5 inspectors currently. If you can move down, please. So what do? We perform on-site and virtual pre-license and periodic inspections. And you can see the list here. We perform barbering and cosmetology inspections, driver education schools, midwifery, orthotics and prosthetics facilities, licensed dog and cat breeder facilities, massage therapy establishments, vehicle storage facilities, used auto parts recyclers. And we oversee a contract with the Department of State Health Services for mold remediation projects. Beginning December 1st, as a result of our sunset review, we have begun to implement risk-based inspections. We began with the massage therapy program, and we have developed a risk-based schedule for both massage establishments and massage schools. So how do we do our work? Inspectors are cross-trained to perform inspections for multiple programs. They have an administrative day, typically where they're doing their planning, report writing, and those sorts of activities. And the rest of the week they're out in the field or performing virtual inspections. So staff complete their duties from either a home office or a field office. And the support and analytics training team monitors workload performance, performs special inspections, develops and conducts training, supports implementation of new technology that is used for inspections. It provides general support to ensure the success of the division. Importantly, inspectors are trained to identify and report signs of human trafficking. Field inspectors have a unique opportunity to make on-the-ground observations and report suspected human trafficking. The division may also provide educational presentations and information to licensees, consumers, and municipal officials. And then you can see our performance for the last 3 years, which averages out at about 25,500 inspections per year. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, that concludes my prepared remarks. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eric. This is Jason. It's kind of lost on me at times during the original work group, but just to clarify, there's a difference in TDLR between inspectors and investigators, correct?
That is correct. Yes,
So
sir.
inspectors in your department deal with routine inspections, not complaint-driven inspections.
Yes, and so the investigators work in the enforcement division, and they are responding to consumer complaints. My folks are going out to licensed facilities and performing either periodic or risk-based inspections in accordance with our rules and laws.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Beverly? Okay. Next up is the Regulatory Program Management Division, RPM. We'll hear from Charlotte Melder and Tim Faskey.
So, good afternoon. I don't know if you've noticed, but it has actually switched over to the afternoon. My name is Charlotte Melder, and I am proud to be the director for the Regulatory Program Management Division. The title itself doesn't really tell you what we do or who we are, such as the name of licensing or enforcement does. Part of the reason for that is because our division is unlike any other division. While we are one division, we are made up of experts and technical specialists whose jobs are tailored to the programs that they serve. For example, specifically in your motor fuel metering and quality program, which we will also refer to as FMQ, our division houses 7 technical specialists who are dedicated to this program. One is the supervisor for the group. His name is Tim Foskey. He is here in Austin, and you'll hear from him in just a little bit. The other 6 are strategically located throughout the state. Their primary duty is to respond to suspected skimmers. In our division, we get reports of suspected skimmers directly from our consumers and anyone who fills out the online form, such as merchants, service companies and technicians, financial institutions, etc. That box is checked routinely throughout the day so that we can get a near immediate response for us to send someone out. They also assist our enforcement division with checking suspected violations, such as device performance and fuel quantity complaints. These specialists also work closely with law enforcement. They provide training, and some of them also contributed some in the initial steps needed to get the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center, the FCIC, set up. That entire group now works closely with Adam, headed up with the section manager of Stuart Strenod. Like I mentioned, each program in our division is tailored to the needs of the industry. So very different from our motor fuel metering and quality group is our specialists who are responsible for midwifery, for example. In that program, the staff have an extensive history and wealth of knowledge and know-how in administrative regulation that they bring to the conversation with the advisory board, with associations, schools, etc. So Katie Bryce, with the help of Mary Hoffman, are a single point of contact for anyone in the industry for questions and concerns. They also coordinate and run a midwife education summit on a regular basis, and they have renowned speakers come in and provide training. They also coordinate quite a bit. They assist other agency staff and technical and complex matters that require their perspective so that we can issue licenses, enforce code requirements, and otherwise ensure that we are effective in our administration of each program. Of the 39 programs here at TDLR, we are responsible in this capacity for all programs except for a small handful that are solely education related, such as offender education programs. As you have seen by the layout of our division, we are divided into 4 sections. Each of those sections has a section manager. Stuart Sternad, whose team is over your program, is one of them. And then there's Heather Muir, Chris Russi, and Delisa Hamilton, who is our newest. In the past, when I make this presentation and introduce my division to you all, I list each and every one of the programs, but in deference to how long this meeting has already gone and the data dump I feel like you all are getting, I'm going to skip that for you all. Just know that we do have quite a few programs that we have specialized technical folks working hard to advance. What follows in the handout that you were provided are just some statistics that we typically report to the commission when they meet. That includes a report of our technical inspections for programs that do have that, such as boilers, but also third-party inspections, such as in your program, the number of combative sports events that we hold each month, etc. We don't really have a lot of data for our programs right now, which is why only some of the programs are represented in that report. But that leads me to the last portion of what I really wanted to highlight, and that is our response to the Sunset Commission's review. Our division was specifically tasked by Sunset to get more data-driven. And as a result, we hired a data specialist to help us with this, and all programs in RPM are going through a review to identify opportunities to incorporate data-driven decision-making and data-driven processes into programmatic activities. We're working to streamline the data collection, et cetera, create dashboards and all that. In this program, Timothy Morales and others within FMQ, the team, actually started this process before we even had Sunset. We have taken that framework that they created and are working to develop statistical models and dashboards to track trends in violations over time, by severity of violation, by geographic area in the state, and all of this with the goal of preventing and/or reducing future violations. We had already started this process, this analysis on skimmer complaints and reports, and we're working to expand this to other violation categories to find risk factors really in FMQ. The question was asked earlier by one of y'all about whether or not we do routine inspections, and a couple of people have talked about that. Well, these numbers that we are gathering will help us strategically deploy resources to locations where the risk for violations is highest and where those violations pose the highest risk of harm to citizens in the state of Texas. We're not there yet, but we are working on it. These numbers will also assist in us developing targeted outreach and educational materials as we work to prevent FMQ violations. So that is a very brief overview of our division, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have before I turn the rest of the presentation over to Tim Foskey to introduce himself, his team, and to give you the presentation you will see at future meetings. Did you have any questions? All right, wonderful. Tim, take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Foskey, and I will be giving the staff report for the motor fuel metered and quality, FMQ. Start with personnel updates. Since 2019, there's been no changes to the FMQ, or excuse me, motor fuel metered and quality staffing at TDLR. The FMQ program resides in the Regulatory Program Management Division within the Business and Consumer Safety section, managed by Stuart Sinnard and supervised by Tim Foskey. The FMQ team is comprised of 6 FMQ program specialists located throughout the state and 1 program specialist in Austin for processing incoming skimmer complaints and reporting. The FMQ program specialists continue to perform skimmer, fuel quantity, and fuel quality technical inspections in response to complaints received by TDLR. Statistics. Fiscal year 2022, from September to January the 13th, skimmer complaints inspections conducted by TDLR was 239. Skimmer inspections, skimmers identified and removed by TDLR, 63. Merchant reports received by TDLR was 51. Skimmers identified and removed by merchants, service companies, and others were 72. Technical inspections, fuel quantity inspections, 45. Fuel quality inspections, 12. Fiscal year 2021, starting in September and ending August 31st. Skimmer complaints inspections conducted by TDLR, 690. Skimmers identified and removed by TDLR, 216. Merchant reports received by TDLR, 167. Skimmers identified and removed by merchants, service companies, and others, 294. Technical inspections, fuel quantity inspections, 181. Fuel quality inspections, 71. Current projects. FMQ program specialists have been working with financial institutions, providing reports to us on retail motor fuel facilities where possible skimmer activity are occurring from analytics received from compromised credit card data throughout the state. These reports received from financial institutions are reviewed by the FMQ specialist and prioritized with incoming consumer complaints and their assigned areas. All technical inspections where skimmers have been detected and removed are currently being sent to the newly established Financial Crimes Intelligence Center, the FCIC. Staff communicate with the FCIC daily to assist in further detection and collection of data on retail motor fuel facilities with possible skimmers on credit card point of sale devices. Outreach. FMQ staff have been working with the TDLR Office of Strategic Communication on developing and designing a flyer to provide outreach to merchants, law enforcement, service technician, and service companies regarding required skimmer reporting, along with offering bi-monthly virtual trainings. Outreach is still being provided during technical inspections to assist in device registration and required reporting of skimmers found. FMQ staff continue to monitor the FMQ Tech Info email box daily to provide responses to technical questions from the public, merchants, operators, service companies, and service technicians. And this concludes my report.
Hey, Tim, Jason Harris here. Just another question to kind of make sure everyone's on the same page with understanding the relationship between the different divisions and who's involved. In situations where there's a complaint, whether it's quality or quantity, and the investigator from the enforcement division needs more information, they may call upon a technical specialist in RPM to go to the site and perform a meter assessment or a fuel quality sample. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct. We will help assist when they need some help, whatever that may be. That is correct.
But that would not be an inspector from the field inspections division. That would be someone from RPM.
Yes, that would be one of the 6 technical specialists would be contacted, depending on where they're located, obviously throughout the state. The enforcement division or investigator would contact that specialist and request them to help assist.
Okay, thanks for getting that right in my brain. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Any other questions for Tim? Okay, moving on. We'll go to the Office of Process and Project Management and hear from Julianne Crocker.
Good morning. Welcome, Advisory Board, and congratulations on your appointments. We're so happy for your service. Again, my name is Julianne Crocker. I'm a management analyst with the Office of Process and Project Management. We're strategically positioned to efficiently complete projects and promote innovative growth within our agency. We work across the agency with all divisions to implement problem solving and collaboration. We're comprised of 2 arms. We have our process review and enhancement partners, or PREP, and we have our Enterprise Project Management Office, or EPMO. The PREP team works to enhance existing processes and ensure processes are lean, utilizing techniques from Lean and Six Sigma, such as 5S or root cause analysis. And our Enterprise Project Management team provides a standard approach to project delivery. Some of the things we do in addition to those roles are empower employees by providing time and location for them to safely err on the job pain points and lead them to create their own safe to fail experiments using design thinking or whiteboard theory, which takes about 2.5 hours over a couple of sessions. We also work collaboratively with all the divisions to deliver training and tools that are needed. And again, I'll keep my mind short and sweet. Any questions about our program?
Thank you, Julianne. Next up is the Office of Strategic Communication. We'll hear from Steve Bruno.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and board members. Let me add my welcome and to you to your first meeting, and again, my congratulations on your appointments and my thanks for your service and all of your expertise. It was so great just to watch the introductions and see the depth and breadth we have here represented for this industry. It's really great. I'm just going to give a quick overview of the Office of Strategic Communication. We cover several areas here at TDLR. We provide advisory board support, most importantly to you, through Mary Winston and her team. And then Mary also oversees our anti-trafficking unit. Unfortunately, there are some programs that we deal with, and yours is not high on the list for that. But some of our other programs, especially our massage therapy program and our cosmetology program, unfortunately, we do have to deal with human trafficking, and so we have a unit that's ready for that. Our communications team is responsible for all of our media relations, press releases, and handling all of our social media. Government relations, that's myself. I'm sorry if I failed to introduce myself. I'm Steve Bruno, the Senior Government Relations Officer here. And then our web and digital media, of course, critical pieces to the Office of Strategic Communication and to all that we do for our licensees and for the public. Here's a bit of a further breakdown of our advisory board support and anti-trafficking units. With advisory board support, I'll just point out you've got great assistance from Mary and her team, Anna Clark, Angelica Lopez Sparks, and Delia Luna. And if we can keep going on to the next one, this simply shows each of the different advisory boards that they cover. As you can see, we remain quite busy here at TDLR. It's pretty rare for a week to go by without 2 or 3 advisory board meetings.
I had a quick question.
Absolutely.
I've sat in on some of the trafficking with cosmetology class, and are they ever planning on bringing that to this industry to mandate the ability to see that and identify that? I mean, we're at gas stations, near hotels, restaurants, where all this happens anyway. So I just wonder if they were ever planning on bringing that to this.
Steve, could I jump in one sec?
Absolutely. Thank you,
Okay.
Mary.
Thanks, Adam, for that question. Steve, as Senior Government Relations Specialist, would know more about what's going on over at the Ledge. But I can tell you that internally, we have had training with our specialists internally. We partner with several different associations that do spot, who train their workers to spot this kind of thing, human trafficking, the hotels, as well as convenience stores and so forth. And we will make sure that we pull in everybody. Thank you for mentioning that, because that'll be another opportunity to enlighten about what's going on.
Right. Yeah, I love that program, and I saw a lot of opportunity, and I don't know how to teach my guys because I'm not specialized in that. So I would definitely be more than willing to get involved more in that and teach, our guys through here and not spread it through the industry.
We do have a training coming forward in actually later this month for law enforcement, and as part of ATU, not only are they boots on the ground, my team, to go into and conduct inspections that are related to trafficking reports, but we also educate. So that's part of what we do. So definitely we'll hop on that. Thank you.
And I'll just add a really quick note, if you don't mind, Mary, in addition to the great information that you provided, thank you very much. Anybody is welcome to Google the Be the One video. It's from the Texas Attorney General's office, and it's a documentary that provides great information and really enables all of us, as is implied in the title, to be the one to make a difference for even one person. And so I would encourage anybody at the meeting and anyone listening to check out that resource as well. And again, thank you for that wonderful question about such an important topic. Real quick, the government relations team, it's myself, Jeff Kopis, and then Julie Davis I need to provide a couple of updates to this document, which we'll do. But Julie Davis, we're very excited to announce, is the newest member of our government relations team. Julie comes to us with amazing experience, including from the Sunset Advisory Commission and from the Office of the Governor. Our communications folks, that's Tila Mange, our public information officer, and Doug Van Pelt, our communication specialist. They're the ones who help us to make sure that we're not only on top of everything that's going on, but that we're responding when necessary, and really helping to make take what can often be complex things and make them as easy to understand and as plain language as possible for folks. Next, our web and digital media folks. Again, these are the folks that make sure that everything looks good on our website, and equally as important, all these meetings, as has been told to you before, all these meetings are archived, so that if anybody misses anything, you can always go back and watch it. And that's another great service that these folks provide to us. In addition to broadcasting them, it's archiving them. And that goes for our commission meetings as well. Just a quick example, our homepage, I would encourage you, if you haven't already, do sign up for our email updates. It's right there at the top of the page. You can select this program and it'll help make sure that you receive the most up-to-date information on this program. And then in the final page, I believe we've got some example of some of our social media efforts on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And if there are no other questions, I'll say thank you very much. Here are some important contact information, pieces of contact information you might need. And of course, if anybody ever has any question about government relations or what's happening at the Capitol, please feel free to reach out to me. We're happy to help and step in anywhere that is beneficial to you all. Thanks very much.
Greatly appreciate it, Steve. Next up is some comments from the executive office. I feel like I was remiss earlier in beginning the meeting. I did not adequately introduce Mr. Hernandez, who as of just a few days ago is the new executive director for TDLR. So I'm sure he hasn't heard it enough times, but he's got giant shoes to fill. But working with him before, I know that he's up to the task. So greatly appreciate his contribution to this group and working with him and the folks that work for him. So I think we'll be hearing from him and some other folks about the executive office.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Presiding Officer Harris. You're stealing some of my thunder. Good afternoon, board members as well. My name is David Gonzalez. I'm Deputy Executive Director of Licensing Services. And I also want to thank you for your dedication to the motor fuel metering and quality industry. That's the program that we oversee. And if you haven't noticed already, we get really used to our acronyms. We have shortened it to FMQ. We've been using it throughout the meeting. I'm not sure, we probably told you that we were, but for the audience listening at home, acronyms are our livelihood, part of our livelihood. So FMQ, ATU, Anti-Trafficking Unit, all these things we do. If we need to call a timeout or give you a reference sheet, just let us know, because we do get accustomed to using those acronyms. I want to thank you for volunteering to assist and advising us, because it's difficult for us to determine our path forward without y'all's help and guidance. The public that we serve deserves y'all's expertise. I wasn't exactly sure what to focus on, but I'm going to try to keep it short. Executive office does a lot, but want to make sure that we get in just some of the major points so you know who we are. We're charged and what we do. We're charged with providing leadership for the agency today and into the future. We do everything we can to invest in our staff, their training, and hope to develop the next great leaders in state government. Whether it's management training or even Toastmasters, the public speaking skills that you've seen here today, we hope to be refining those and getting better at it. You've seen some of our staff giving presentations today that have benefited from things like Toastmasters. So we really do want to make the best use of our funds to make sure our staff are doing the most professional job in doing these presentations and providing you information. Our executive leadership staff will tell you, they'll be the first to tell you actually, that we get to take a lot of the credit for all the hard work, all the real work that's being done behind the scenes by our customer service division, licensing division, our RPM division, who are the boots on the ground with field inspections. All that stuff that's going on, that's the real work. Executive leadership does what we can to keep everybody focused, though, on our vision and our mission, which is to be the best and to earn the trust of Texans every day. Executive leadership is also expected to set the example for agency core values like customer service and accountability, which is two of the core values that Mike in particular wants us to focus on. And we're particularly fond of core value of open and free communication, which encompasses these meetings. These advisory board meetings are so important for the public to know what's going on, to be able to give their input and hear what's happening in their industry, and not have to necessarily travel to Austin to do it. They can hear at the leisure of their homes. So I suspect that you may be familiar with our previous executive director, Mr. Brian Francis, whose personality and influence on state government has been larger than life over the years. We wish him well in his retirement and all of his future endeavors. We're actually quite fortunate that he was very deliberate in preparing us for his departure in our agency's next chapter. And that's where we're at right now, the next chapter. So first on the list of introductions is our executive director, Mr. Mike Mendez, whom you've met. He's a former deputy director here at this agency and also former chair of the TDR Commission. So a very unique perspective and experience level, because he actually was our boss at the highest level, at the chair of the commission level. Now he's our boss as an executive director. He's also a graduate of Texas Tech, and he'll frequently remind you of that. He's earned much of his experience in municipal government in the Panhandle region. He is now resident of Hutto, Texas, and we are fortunate to have him as our new executive director. I suspect he'll fill in some gaps if there's anything important that I've left out. Supporting our executive director is a well-rounded group of staff, including our senior deputy executive director, Christina Kaiser. She used to be enforcement division director. She got promoted to be a deputy, and she oversees the enforcement division, the regulatory program management division, field inspections division, and now has the added responsibility of overseeing our IT division. So she was a deputy. She's now senior deputy of this agency. Mike's right hand, if you would. And with the help of our newish IT director, Mr. John Fowler, who we got from Texas Workforce Commission, I think she's prepared to move ahead and take over the reins from Mike on the IT division responsibilities. Also of great significance to us, she's also in charge of our Sunset Bill implementation efforts with the support of all of our agency staff and their teams. Then there's me. I'm Deputy Executive Director David Gonzalez, graduate of A&M University, 26 years of experience here at TDLR, and I proudly oversee the licensing division, customer service division, education and examination divisions, which you've all heard from, and then most recently inherited the responsibilities for our emergency strategic response efforts, which come up when there's tornadoes and hurricanes and droughts and floods and those kind of things. One of our newest additions to our executive staff is Chief of Staff Hemant Macon, who has taken over most of the responsibilities that our previous deputy, Mike Mendez, held. He oversees OSC, which you've heard about, asset management, finance. He's taken over some of those reins as well. And he's also overseeing the advisory boards and anti-traffic units. So they report to executive office. Again, you've seen and met some of those staff. Hemant is going to be providing them guidance and leadership. He is a particularly amazingly talented individual, and we were fortunate enough to acquire his talents when the podiatry program was transferred to TDLR. So there he served as an executive director, and he brings a vast wealth of knowledge and experience to our group, including financial and legislative experience. So very important about executive is nothing really happens without the contributions and creativity of our executive assistants. All of them make sure that we're on time and in these meetings, and that we've reviewed all these documents to make sure that the agendas are right. So round of applause for all of our executive assistants that help out. It also includes some of the subgroups you've heard from already. General Counsel, you heard from Jessica Escobar, a star at our agency. The Office of Process and Project Management, you heard from Julianne Crocker, who reports to Kenny Wright in that division. OSC, you heard from Mr. Bruno. But not to be left out, these are the last two divisions, and I know y'all been drinking from a fire hose, so these are the last two divisions, and we'll get to move on. But our Human Resources Division needs to be mentioned here. They are very important to our activities. They're overseen by our very own personal attorneys, Sharon Hamoya and her deputy, Sharday Edmond. The staff that they have working there it's never ending work for them because we're a 500 person agency, approximately 500, and they have a small group to take care of all the hiring, the separations, the payroll, the leave, staff and health benefits, staff development, and just can't imagine what we've gone through with the pandemic and COVID protocols that we've had to deal with. None of our operations happen without their tireless efforts. So props to Sharon and Sharday. And then last but not least, especially in these times, is our information security group, who is led by Victoriano Casas and his group. They are making sure that we're aware of all the cybersecurity matters affecting our operations, which are significant because we license a lot of people and their personal information. We don't want it to become public and we don't want it to be threatened. So they keep us up to date on training and everything that affects our activities, advising the agency on possible cyber threats. And I'm going to leave it at that because I know we've gone a little bit long, but I'm here to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'm done with the intro and turning it over to Ms. Kaiser.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and board members. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you here, and we look forward to taking advantage of your expertise about your profession. My name is Christina Kaiser. As David mentioned, I'm one of the deputy executive directors under Mike. I'm responsible for the enforcement division, regulatory program management, field inspections, and new to my house is information technology. And I'm very proud and excited to work with this group. I want to tell you a little bit today about the legislative session and our sunset efforts. I want to thank all the speakers who have come before who have already talked about the pieces that they're working on that relate to sunset. And I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavor of how big this is. We have at least 14 teams. And within those teams, I don't know how many sub teams that are working on pieces of the sunset requirements. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of my remarks. So I'll start just with the legislative session. As you probably know, the state legislature met last year in regular session from January through June. While the legislative session is going on, TDLR is constantly monitoring bills that may touch upon us in some way. Obviously, last session, our sunset bill was one of the biggest of those. The other one would have been our budget. But all told, we were monitoring more than 300 bills that would have affected us in some way if they passed. Out of those 300, about 50 of them passed. And so after the legislative session was over, our executive director at the time, Brian, created a group of bill implementation teams to get about the business of putting into operation the changes in law that came through those various pieces of legislation that passed related to us. Relating to this program in particular, of course, there were two bills that passed. There was House Bill 2106 that created the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center, and there was Senate Bill 2062 that created actually this advisory board. And so the fact that you're meeting here today is evidence of the work of one of those bill implementation teams. Miss Mary Winston, and sorry, Mary, I can't remember what bill team number it was, but Mary is in charge of one of those implementation teams, and her team was responsible for all things related to advisory boards. So Bill Team 3, thank you. So her team was responsible not only for the bill that created this advisory board, but also under the sunset bill, a couple of advisory board changes were made. Some advisory boards were dissolved and reconstituted in a different form. One of the features of the sunset bill is that the the barber and cosmetology programs, which up to now have been regulated separately with separate advisory boards, are going to be merged. And that's a process of a couple of years worth of work that we're already well into. But bringing those two advisory boards together into one is also some work that Mary's group has done. So all told, at the end of the legislative session, 28 different bill implementation, or BIT teams for short, were created. Out of those, another example was there was a separate bill team that was created just to implement House Bill let me make sure I say the number right. House Bill 2106 that created the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center. And so we're happy to report that that is up and running. Last month, I believe there was a ribbon cutting ceremony where the FCIC was sort of introduced to the world. Brian Francis and several other folks that are on this call participated in that meeting. And we have been getting regular updates from Mr. Adam Colby, who is running it, and we're very excited to be able to work with him. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about Sunset, recognizing that the Sunset Report did not specifically address this program. The timing of this program coming over to TDLR was after a certain date, and so anything that was after that date was kind of off limits for the Sunset Review that we underwent. However, a lot of the principles of the Sunset Review are definitely, going to find their way into how we regulate this program. So I've already mentioned a couple of the features of the Sunset Bill. So let me just kind of tell you a little bit of the process. So Sunset staff for about a year in 2018 and 2019 were over at TDLR kind of every day. And they were having meetings with various groups of staff and just kind of digging in and learning about how we do our business. At the end of their 1 year or maybe more of reviewing the agency, the Sunset staff, the actual employees of that agency, prepared a Sunset staff report that came out in June of 2000. And that contained a series of recommendations related to the agency. And there are two types of recommendations. There were statute change types of recommendations, and there were management action type of recommendations. The statute change ones are, not surprisingly, recommendations for changes in some statute that TDLR administers. Management action recommendations don't require a law change, but they are still directing the agency to do something different than what we were before. And so as soon as that report came out in June of 2020, we began working on the management action recommendations and even some of the statute recommendations that we had no reason to believe would be controversial or unlikely to pass. And so Brian, our executive director at the time, kindly put me in charge of the early work on that group. And so I've just been continuing to oversee it ever since then. At this, we have already finished work on some of those pieces. And so when the legislative session happened, the statute change recommendations that are part of the Sunset Report get put into the form of a bill, a piece of legislation that then has to pass during the legislature. That was House Bill 1560. And it thankfully did pass. It continued TDLR for 12 more years, and included a bunch of statutory changes. The ones that I would say are probably of the most interest to your group are the ones that are embodied in the Article 1 of the Sunset Bill. There are some sort of far-reaching recommendations there, one of which is, for example, in our enforcement program, we are expected to do to prioritize complaints based on risk. And some other folks have already talked about in our inspections world, we're expected to prioritize inspections based on risk. And so, and then Charlotte talked to you about how we're just in a general sense being directed to be more data driven. We welcomed these recommendations because these are actually consistent with agency goals that have been stated in our last two strategic plans, where we have stated that we want to be more strategic and more targeted in our use of regulatory resources. Because, of course, the amount of regulatory work that we could do is just, wide open, but we only have a limited amount of resources. And so we want to use those resources to our best, to the best benefit of the state of Texas, and focus on health and safety. And so these are all, at this point, there are 14 teams, like I said, working on various pieces of the Sunset Bill. And you will see, you will continue to hear about those efforts, and you will actually, through one of your work groups, have an opportunity to assist at some point with some of that on the complaint prioritization side. I have told you a whole bunch of stuff really fast. As David said, drinking from a fire hose. My apologies for that. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And failing that, I will turn the floor over to Miss Mary Winston.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is going to be the final section of staff reports. This is our non-scientific method for just monitoring what we put on page, who contacts us, who looks on our page, what we need, what information we need to provide. Earlier, we had a conversation of what information needs to get out. This is one of the ways that TDLR does that. And we assess how it's reached and how many it's reached. And those numbers help us drive what is the next thing that we put on our website. Over the past 6 months, we've had almost 18,000 views, almost 100 a day, on the Motor Fuel and Metering and Quality website. That web page, 70% of those visitors assess it from the desktop computer, and 29% from a smartphone, 1% from a tablet. This definitely changes depending on which profession that we're talking about. We have some professions that are more on the go, and we have a vastly higher number of communications via smartphone versus desktop. But what we need to know is our information effective, and can it be effectively communicated? So far, so good, and we're working every day to improve. Top reasons for visiting the site: device performance review, laws and rules, forms and publications, how to apply for a new registration for a new device, and how to renew a device registration. Those are the top 5. They will change depending on the traffic of the website. And in the words of our previous wonderful executive director, Brian Francis, and before that we had Bill Kuntz, and I kind of refer to him as Director Emeritus, and he would always say, we need to get to making the sausage. So after we have done all these introductions and we all know who we are and where we sit, board, it's time for you guys to get to making the sausage. With that, I turn it over to our presiding officer to proceed with the agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary, and thanks to all those that took the time to explain to the board what their division does, the officer division does, and how that is integrated into how we can support those functions. Next item on the agenda, we're going to discuss work group assignments. So I don't want to steal too much thunder from Jessica, but basically within the board, there are going to be 4 work groups that will focus on some aspect of fuel metering or quality. And each of us will be assigned to one or more to deliberate and discuss the issues at hand and bring that information back to the board in order to make a decision on it. So Jessica's going to kind of explain how that process is going to work.
Thank you, Chairman. So as Chairman explained, we've got 4 work groups that we've got on for this advisory board. For those of you that were a part of our work group, it's a little bit confusing because previously we had a work group and then we had sub work groups. For those of you that were a part of the sub work groups, they're a little bit similar. So this time around, we have 4 work groups, and I'll kind of walk those through for you. For those of you following along that have an agenda, for those of you that are on the board, we're going to start off with our enforcement work group. So the function of the enforcement work group is to work with our enforcement staff. So you'll have a liaison on all of these work groups. It'll be a department staffer. They'll work with you. And the enforcement work group will be reviewing, making recommendations for criminal conviction guidelines. And what is that? So that means when you're looking at licensing processes, what is allowable when you're looking for somebody to be able to get licensed? So when the motor fuel program was transferred, it came with new parameters for our service technicians, for our service companies, and that meant that they had to have criminal background checks. With that came the need for criminal conviction guidelines, and that sub work group helped to create those with our enforcement staff. Penalty matrix, this is something that's very important. So when you have rules, there are penalties tied to them, and you've got to decide what is the appropriate penalty. Enforcement group creates those, and any other enforcement related matters. These are the things that they'll work on. The rules, compliance, and standards work group. So this is a combination of a couple of things that we had with those sub work groups. Previously, we had a rules work group, we had an inspection and calibration work group. We've kind of melded those together, and the rationale is they kind of all work together. So we've got the rules, compliance, and standards. This work group is going to work to develop the rules that affect the entire motor fuel program. So you're going to take a look at what's existing, take a look at recommendations for new rules, and also look at the compliance and standards that need to that affect the program as a whole, not just for the merchants and the devices, but also for the service technicians, the service companies, and what are the best practices out there that are affecting the nation. What are the guides and parameters that they're following? For example, the NIST guidelines, the ASTM guidelines. So making sure that we're staying on top of that and being relevant and making sure that everybody is keeping in line with that and updating accordingly. The next big one is skimmers. This was on the last sub-work group, and we're keeping it in line. This is going to be a bigger one now. And the reason why I say it's bigger is because we've been talking about House Bill 2106, which created the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center, but it also made updates to some skimmer rules that were in place previously. Now that entire chapter of skimmer rules came over to TDLR. It's under our purview, and TDLR is the agency delegated with the task of handling skimmers, inspecting for skimmers, taking skimmer reports. So not only that, we have to determine the criteria related to what do merchants need to be doing, what do service companies need to be doing, and technicians when they're out there inspecting. So this work group needs to determine what are those parameters, what are the best practices. And this is something that became a little bit of became contentious previously. And so this is why rulemaking is so important for us, to get industry input. And so this is going to be something that we work together on. And finally, the continuing education work group. So this was briefly alluded to earlier. You heard from Ford. Continuing education is not something that has existed before in this industry. You all may or may not know, the licensing for service technicians has changed. Previously, service technicians were licensed every 5 years. There was a what they needed to do to be licensed again was they went and took an exam. There was no tie for continuing education. They just went in every 5 years and took the exam. So now the way licensing runs at TDLR is every 2 years you renew your license, but there is no continuing education component. So in having a continuing education component, we can ensure that people maintain standards and are up to date on the current technologies. So this is something that will be going from the ground up. So this group will work very closely with Ford and his division to develop the requirements for providers, what the requirements should be, how many hours, who needs to take it, how frequently, are there certain parameters that need to be included? Should skimmers be a minimum standard? Should be rules and regulations? What should those look like? So that'll be a very big and ongoing process. Now, related to the makeup of the work groups, like the presiding officer said, you may be on one or more. The other caveat to that is we've got our ex officios. So they can also be put on these work groups. They do not count towards quorum. So these work groups can have a maximum of 4 members of the advisory board, but you can also have your ex officios on any of these work groups. So they will not count towards that number of 4 because they are non-quorum, non-voting members. So they can be on any of those, contribute. For our skimmer work group, I will say that we have our Financial Crimes Intelligence Center staff available to us at any time. So they don't have to be appointed to the work group, but they are available to us at any time to provide assistance that you may need. And I will defer to Chairman Harris and Delia.
Thank you, Jessica. I'll just let the board members know I've essentially taken the liberty of pre-assigning folks to the various work groups based on your knowledge, skills, and abilities. Delia, what was, yeah, she's got it up on the screen now. We need to leave this meeting with a definitive set of members for each work group. So I'm putting this on the screen to kind of show you where I thought the best fit was, but I would definitely want to hear from you if you have any concerns, or if you feel like your primary interest and ability to provide knowledge and experience is maybe not being used to the best potential if you're not on the group that you want to be on, so to speak. So we'll go in order, looking at the enforcement group. We've got Terry Maxey, Seth Stevens, Adam Thompson, and Keisha on there, with Steve as an ex officio member. I thought that was a good mix of people from multiple facets of the program. Rules, compliance, and standards. Keisha, Terry Hara, Carlos Garza, and myself. Again, the goal was always to try to get the best mix of knowledge.
If you have room on that group, I would like to be on that one if there's ability there.
On the rules one?
Rules, compliance, and standards.
Okay. Let's get through what we have out there, and we'll entertain all those questions or requests. On the skimmers group, got Carlos, Wes, Terry Hara, and Nathan Winkleman, with a couple of ex officio members to provide additional input. And then continuing education, we've got Wes, Adam, Terry, Maxey, and Nathan on that group as well. The thought being there, we've got our two folks that are actually involved in managing those folks in the field, can speak directly to that continuing education requirement. Adam, back to your comment. The rules, compliance, and standards. Because we're limited to 4 people, someone would have to come off. So if someone currently assigned to, actually it'd have to be Terry or Carlos.
And presiding officer, Mary Winston, I wanted to add that this is the first iteration of these work groups. And of course, this is your call, and you kind of made the call. And that whoever's appointed to whichever group at this time by our presiding officer, please know you get an opportunity at a later date if no one is desiring to switch, and so forth and so on. This is the first iteration, sort of the inaugural work groups that Jason's put together for us as presiding officer. And it is subject to change at a later date as well. Just wanted to add that in there.
Thanks, Mary. So I guess I would ask Carlos, if Carlos, if you don't have a preference and would be willing to serve on the enforcement group, rather than the rules, compliance, and standards, that might give Adam an opportunity to serve.
Sure, Jason, that would be fine. I'd be happy to serve on the enforcement group.
Okay. So Delia, if you'll make a change there and strike Adam from the enforcement group and move him to.
Sorry, I don't mean to be difficult.
You want to be on both?
No, that's fine. I want to be on the rules and compliance. I see some issues on the side that we work with, and I think that there should be some input. So if there's a ability there, then that's where I'd like to be that.
Okay. Was there another comment?
Nope, I appreciate it.
I don't know, from someone else? Okay, so I think that works. I appreciate the raising of the hand. Any other comments, concerns, requests? Again, these work groups, their sole function is to make the sausage and offer that advice on how the sausage should be made to the 9-member board, and then we'll have the official discussion and determine what we want to present to the TDLR to move forward on a particular issue. I think that if there's no other questions or concerns about the work groups, Jessica, did you have anything else to add? Are we solid on that?
No, so we're good with the work groups for the moment.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
And I can email this list to all of the board members.
Thanks, Delia.
Mhm.
Moving on. Oh, okay. Moving on. Jessica is going to give us an update on the new Financial Crimes Intelligence Center.
Thank you, Jessica Escobar, and I'm presenting on the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center. This is just a picture of our new beautiful seal for the FCIC, which is our acronym for the FCIC. So House Bill 2106 was created in the 87th legislative session, and it was authored by Representative Mariam Perez, and it was created to establish the Financial Crimes Intelligence Center here at TDLR. I mentioned briefly earlier that it is much bigger than creating just the FCIC. It also transferred an entire chapter of rules related to the to skimmers and skimmer regulation to TDLR that were previously under another agency. So it established that TDLR is the agency in charge of skimmers for the state. But I will say that it is only as it relates to administrative issues. So we are not the agency that will prosecute criminally. And so if there was a skimmer to be found, if we have issues, we are not going to file any criminal charges. That all still remains at a local level. But if there are if there are issues where we're finding that reports are not being filed, anything like that, we have administrative authority as a result of the rules that the statute that was transferred to us. So the FCIC was established here within TDLR, and this is an honor for multiple reasons. It is the first of its kind nationally. It's not even that it's an intelligence center here in Texas, the first of its kind in Texas. It's the first of its kind nationally to handle card fraud and skimmer fraud, and it's already leading the way to protect consumers here in Texas and across the country. So this is delegated authority by the legislature because of the testament that TDLR can prove successful in whatever it does. So we're very excited about it. We began the bill implementation process that Christina was mentioning earlier, and we started that immediately in June once the bill was signed. We started working together with Smith County, who we have an interagency contract with, and we started getting everything in place. So the FCIC is actually headquartered in Tyler at the Smith County District Attorney's Office. They actually oversee the day-to-day operations of the FCIC. So we have an agreement with them so that we have appropriations and we pass through and pay for the operations of the FCIC, but they're the ones doing the day-to-day because they are law enforcement. They have that knowledge that we don't have from a law enforcement standpoint. So well, let me go back here real quick. So these are a few of the folks that are involved, or one of the folks involved, Adam Colby. So he actually came from Tyler PD. Why did we choose Tyler? So Tyler Police Department and the Smith County District Attorney were heavily involved in targeting skimmer fraud at the gas pump. And so they became essentially the leaders in Texas. And we learned about that, and so did other industry leaders. And so we decided that this would be the great place to put it. And so we have contracted with them, like I said, and they are able to perform those functions. So essentially, Jacob Putman, the district attorney, oversees the folks there that are running the office, and Adam Colby is their director, the chief intelligence coordinator. So what does the FCIC do? Their functions are basically to conduct investigative analysis for law enforcement. So they work together and coordinate law enforcement investigations. They do this with specialized software that they've procured for this function. And it's software that other smaller agencies may not have, or maybe they do have it and they don't know how to properly use it for this purpose, or they are able to do it and bring in information that is among lots of agencies and coordinate it so that they can spread it out through multiple agencies across the state. And so this coordinated approach is bringing in multiple agencies, both at the local and statewide level, to provide results more quickly than they would have with individual agencies working on their own. They've launched a portal through this specialized software so that law enforcement can submit reports, so the public can submit tips, and it's allowing them to run more efficiently. They're also gathering intelligence, disseminating it across the country. They're working very closely with financial institutions. They're working with merchants and fuel companies to be able to give them expertise and tips on how to protect themselves, because we're seeing right now that a lot of the credit card issuers are taking very big hits as well. So they're meeting the intent of what the bill was set out to do, building out those public-private partnerships to make sure that everybody works together to protect the public. So with these partnerships, for example, I was talking about the financial institutions, by following the intent of the bill with this limited intelligence sharing, they have been able to go out and inspect for skimmers based on the information that they're receiving and have 90% find rates on skimmers based on this information, which is very impressive. They've already been out and they've already had their first successful ATM fraud investigations, which is something that we expected long down the line, but they're already ahead of the game. So all of the things that they are doing, they've been doing with only 3 staff, which is pretty amazing. They're doing this with their director, with an investigator, and a data analyst. So they're staying very busy and doing what they can with that limited number of staff there in Tyler. Where do we play in? So TDLR plays in that we provide a high level of oversight and that we work with them, make sure things are working out, that the contract is going forward. We provide reimbursement when we get requests from them showing that they've had expenses, their salaries, and then we provide limited administrative functions. We also provide communication support. That awesome seal that you see on the wall, that was developed by our staff. So we provide support to the extent that we can, and the rest of it is run locally. They work very closely with the district attorney and they handle things there. So it's a great relationship. You can see that's our Tobacco Vice Chair Butler, but that's from our grand opening that we had in January. So this was the big ribbon cutting we had, which was very exciting. We had elected officials, senator, congressman. It was a very exciting event that we had such a great turnout for it. It's more than just the individuals coming. It was the fact that many people were excited to support this event that has been many years in the making. So the potential for reducing card fraud is there. So the next pieces will be, of course, the outreach and educating consumers and merchants and service technicians and companies and everybody so that we can let them know this is how you prevent card fraud. So FCIC is coming along great, and you will hear more about it from us in the future.
Thank you. Shifting gears, but staying with Jessica, a rulemaking update.
Jason, can I interrupt and
Yes,
make
please.
a comment? Thank you. This is Steve. I just want to acknowledge the amazing work that TDLR has done on this. You guys are superstars. The main superstar just talked and is about to talk again. Jessica, we can't thank you enough for all of your efforts. So again, we hope to cooperate, collaborate, and move forward on this. And this is a big, big deal. And we are grateful and thankful. So keep doing great stuff. And thanks for my opportunity. I will yield the remainder of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Going on to the rules update. So this is just a limited update for you all. I know we've had some things going on, even though we haven't had an official work group to date. We have been working closely with our unofficial work group, but more importantly, we do keep our industry partners involved. And so one of the things that we have had going on was essentially the deregulation of LPG. And so we recently adopted rules at the most recent commission meeting this past January 25th, and those rules will go into effect March 1st. What that means is that LPG will no longer be regulated at TDLR. You still have to register it at TDA. It just means you won't have the duplicative regulation of having to register here at TDLR your devices. You won't have to have that category for service techs or service technician, service companies or service technicians. And so that is a rule adoption that'll be going into effect March 1st. So that is one piece of rulemaking that we've handled, but that's coming up here down the way. Another thing, just kind of going down rules update. We talked briefly, or extensively, I guess, on rulemaking, how the rulemaking process works. That's going to be coming down the way. You all are going to be really busy. We have a lot of work groups coming. Skimmers is going to be coming. We have a lot to look at for rules. One of the big things that Brian emphasized when you all came over as a program and when we started examining things is let's bring the program over, let things settle, and let's see how things work out. And so now we've had the program for a couple of years and we've had a chance to look at the rules initially. We took them in and, you know, we wanted to do no harm. Let's see how things work out. Are things still working out? And so that's what we're going to be doing, taking a step, going through the rules and saying, okay, this maybe didn't work out the way we anticipated, or this is working great. And so this is our opportunity now that we have an official advisory board to look at those rules and maybe do the cleanups that we need to do. So the rules committee will be meeting on that. The skimmer committee will be meeting to look at the rules that were transferred over as part of House Bill 2106. So there were rules that came over from the OAG that were just kind of left in whole, but those need a severe overhaul. We know that those came over as part of a contentious adoption, and we want to make something that is palatable, workable, and actually provides protection for both consumers and merchants, because we know that merchants are also at risk and are victims of skimmers as well. So those are things that we have to work on as well. Finally, the CE requirements for service technicians. It's going to be a very big and long process. So you can anticipate that you'll be working with us extensively on rulemaking. And those begin here. These are not quick by any means. We're talking about this today in February. We're probably going to be adopting rules next February in 2023. We may be in the middle of session. We may be talking about things next spring. Who knows? But it's a long process. Be patient with us, and we are here to listen to your thoughts and suggestions.
Hey, Jessica, Jason here. There is that one topic you just referenced, kind of straddles two of the work groups. I wanted to get your input on where you think that should fit. So with the skimmer rules, we've got a rules work group and a skimmer work group. What is your thought on that?
So we do, and I think part of it is that, and we had kind of talked about this a little bit, is I think that it sits in the skimmer group, and we can develop things out with the skimmer group as far as the rules and requirements, and we can bring it on over to the work group, and they can kind of take a second look, because ultimately the skimmer work group was developed with the thought that these are our subject matter experts. They are going to be the ones that are in the field or have the knowledge to provide on those best practices. So they're going to be the ones that help us develop that out, and then we can put it into play for rules, and then we can bring it out to the work group as well for the rules. But I think it starts with the skimmer work group to develop those rules with them.
Okay.
Great question.
Thank you. We're almost to the end, folks. So we're going to have another one of these at some point. This would be the time where we take recommendations on any specific topics to add to the next meeting's agenda. Ask the other 8 board members if they have any topics in their mind that they would like added to the agenda.
Presiding Officer Harris, I'll kick it off. So let everybody's juices get flowing about what they want for the next meeting. But Jessica's probably grabbing a sip of water because she just did a heck of a job, as she always does, by outlining what kind of sausage we're going to be making. So there are going to be several work groups that have already been appointed, but they're going to be work group meetings. That anything that comes from those work group meetings would be in the form of a work group report for the next advisory board, the next full board meeting. So that could be something also that would be on the agenda. So we'd start there with reports from the work groups if they are ready at that time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
This is Adam, by the way. I see one of the issues that I don't know if that's something we need to talk up on the back end or if there's something that goes on to that, but it's the licensing, the service technician licensing, what was grandfathered in from prior licensing. I see a huge issue there, but I think that might be something we should talk on the back end and then maybe add that to the agenda. Can we do that, or does it have to be on the agenda on this meeting?
So Adam, thank you for that. I'm not sure, Mary Winston, not quite sure of that complete issue, but let's talk offline so we can get it formulated before we put it as an agenda item. Let's see what staff can do and kind of what's going on. And then presiding officer, we'll get back with you to let you know if this is going to be on the agenda.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Any other issues that folks would like discussed at the next meeting?
Jason, when are you going to have the next meeting?
We're going to get that next. Delia's going to essentially reach out to everyone, all the board members offline, and poll you about what your availability is for the next meeting in order to identify a specific date and time.
Do we
So,
have a
presiding
deadline
officer,
for when that next meeting is? Once we know the next meeting, do we have a deadline before we know how soon we can put, or how late we can put agenda items in?
presiding officer and members, Mary Winston again. Mr. Nance, great question, because you don't have to decide now. As long as we can get it posted properly, noticed, we can get it on the agenda. So that is the next item that we're going to talk about, which is when. And think about a couple of weeks before then that you may want to reach out and say, hey, this is an agenda item I'm thinking about. So there's plenty of time. And how we receive those requests, we really like to try to have one method of or funnel of information, and that's advisory.boards@tdlr.texas.gov. And Delia, several of us get that email. Delia is point for this meeting, and that's how we then disseminate the information or the questions throughout the agency. Just keep it clean so nothing will get lost in the mail, even email, so that there's plenty of time.
And
So
what-
This is Terry. This is Terry Hara. I was curious. I definitely like an idea of us being able to get together and meet as a group, but also when we do our advisory boards, will we be the first one be online, or are we going to try to get together and meet in person?
Terry, I'm sorry, was that for the next advisory board meeting you were asking, or for one of the work group meetings?
I was asking for both.
Oh, okay. Currently, Mary Winston again, we're going to hold with the virtual meeting for a bit until we get word from up above that we can move on and do something in person. Also, for the work group meetings, they're called at kind of different times, and it depends on the scheduling for folks. And even before we had the ability to do virtual things, we would do it via a phone call. So now we can actually meet and virtually and see each other's face while we do it. But so far, it's going to be virtual. That way you only have to X out a limited amount of time and not include time for travel.
Okay, thank you.
So again, Delia is going to reach out. I think there's a notion that the next meeting is going to be pretty quick turnaround because there's a lot of things we need to work on. She's shaking her head. But what do you have an estimate of time frame, Delia?
Well, I know that the work groups have to meet, and so staff will be reaching out to the work groups, to the work group members, and then depending on what they have, then they can direct me to start scheduling meetings. But right now, I will poll as soon as I hear something from Jessica or Mary, and take it from there. But right now, no, we don't have anything scheduled, or anything. We don't have anything scheduled soon for the next month or so.
We're actually scheduling out right now. I know we have now scheduled advisory board meetings because we have about 30. I think we're into April now. So we're looking, it's going to be, I'm thinking after that time, unless Jessica calls and says, hey, we've got to pull everybody in. But it will be, currently we're scheduling out to April, which means we have other boards ahead of you. So I think we're scheduled out to mid-April. So it would be after that time or early May that Delia will reach out to you in plenty of time to make sure that we can make sure which dates. She reaches out with 3 different dates for a week that's good with staff and hopefully good with you guys, and we'll schedule at that time. So looking at early May, maybe?
Yeah, yes, this is Jessica. Y'all, I think that this would probably look like May sometime because we have multiple work groups that we want to meet first. And there may be a couple meetings before we actually get something that we want to bring to the board. So it will probably require a couple meetings before we get to that point. So that way we can bring something substantive to the full board at that time. So it's not going to, the full board will not be meeting probably in the next couple months. It may be May, June, but you can anticipate that the work group will be meeting sooner, and we'll still poll you on that one. But it's a lot smaller and a lot easier to work with when there's only 4 people. So that one will be much easier to coordinate, and that one will be probably meeting in the next few weeks, like less than a month. But the board will probably be much later, like May, so we can make sure we have something substantive to discuss, and we're not spending your time without anything productive at that meeting.
Okay, if there's no other comments or requests for addition of topics for the next meeting, I think the focus now will move into the work groups, the individual work groups, and the team here will share some information on how those folks need to get together and interact on those topics. I think we've covered decay. So I just want to, thank all of you personally for devoting your time to such a worthy cause. The mere existence of this board kind of tells you everything you need to know about the TDLR and how they operate. Those of us that interact with other government agencies with respect to regulation and compliance, I'm sure you can all speak to the fact that this is an anomaly, but it speaks to their dedication to getting all the correct information and making knowledgeable and well thought out decisions that impact everybody. I mean, their primary goal is consumer protection through a licensing program essentially, but they know that they are not technical experts on these various programs in many respects. So the fact that they're willing to accept our guidance and I won't use wisdom, but our knowledge and expertise to help them get it right says everything about how they operate. And so I appreciate them and I appreciate you for taking part. With no other additional comment, I'll go ahead and mark this meeting as adjourned. The current time is 1:14 p.m. Thank you all again. Have a great day.